welcome to the regular council meeting for Monday, April 22nd, 2013, here at the Shaw Auditorium in downtown Nanaimo. And I'd like to call our regular meeting to order and start off with an introduction of any late items. Mr. Howard. Thank you, Your Worship. We'd like to delete 8H1, the Property Maintenance Bylaw 1990, number 3704-2366 Pheasant Terrace. We'd also like to delete 8H2, the same property maintenance bylaw number 3704 for 290 Wakesaya Avenue. We'd also like to delete number 9B, the communications plan. Okay, Mr. Kenny, do you have a comment on that?
Yes, Your Worship. We received, after the agenda was printed, we received some input from the Chamber of Commerce about the communications plan. We'd like to make sure that wherever possible we can review that input and accommodate it in the plan. So we'd like to pull it off the agenda and put it back on in a couple of weeks. Okay, fine. Thank you. So could we ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended? So moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into adoption of the minutes.
Move the adoption of the minutes.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And that's going to be A and B. The moving into presentations, which is the first thing, and it's actually my very great honor to present an award. It's the Duke of Edinburgh Bronze Award this evening, and we have a gentleman here that's a recipient on it. I just want to say that this is a very prestigious award. That was, thanks very much, Bill. It was started by the actual Duke of Edinburgh himself, and there are actually three levels. There's the gold at the very top, then there's the silver, and the bronze. And the bronze obviously is the lead-in one, and that doesn't demean the importance of it in any way. It's a very prestigious award, and I'm ever so proud to be able to present the Bronze Award, for Duke of Edinburgh's Bronze Award, to Flight Sergeant Hayden Smith of 205 Collishaw Squadron of the Royal Canadian Air Cadets. And if you'd like to step forward, Sergeant, we'll, and I think maybe we're going to get some family photos as well. Well, congratulations on behalf of the city, and this is your award. Hayden S. Smith has achieved the bronze standard of the Duke of Edinburgh Award, May 2011. In any event, was it that old? Oh, okay, I just want to make sure it wasn't a typo on there. Well, that's good. So, congratulations again. And if you want to turn, and we'll get some photographs of the family. You don't have a camera? Why is it? Okay, the second presentation is going to be Ms. Susan Clift, Director of Engineering and Public Works, and Mr. Ewan Wilson, the Water Resources Technologist, to provide a presentation regarding the findings of the City of Nanaimo water audit of city's water supply and distribution system. Welcome.
Members of Council, this evening staff are presenting the city's final results of our recently completed water audit. The purpose of this water audit is to completely understand how our water consumption demands are met and how our system responds to those demands. In 2007, Council adopted the city's water supply strategy. The three principles of that strategy were to, first, provide safe drinking water, secondly, to ensure a sustainable water supply, and thirdly, to provide cost-effective delivery. Now, as part of that second goal, ensuring a sustainable water supply, in 2008, the city adopted its first water conservation strategy. Now, furthermore, the city's current strategic plan identifies water supply and conservation as one of its strategic priorities. Nanaimo's current conservation measures include universal metering, full cost accounting, an expanded block rate structure, water sprinkling in the summer restrictions, participation in the RDN's Water Smart program, the toilet rebate program, and now conducting this water audit. The recommendations of this water audit will be targeting actions that will be incorporated into our strategic plan for conservation, and that will be presented later in the year for Council to consider. I'd now like to introduce Mr. Ewan Wilson. He is an engineering technologist with the city's Water Resources section of Engineering and Public Works, and he will now present the findings of our water audit.
Good evening. I'd like to tell you this evening why we did the audit, what we found and what recommendations we're going to achieve from carrying out the audit. So why do a water audit? A water audit is a thorough examination of the accuracy of your water data and your water records, and it can help determine the volume of water required from the treatment source to the end user or the customer. The city chose to issue a public proposal, and we received 4 bids from engineering consultants, the winner of which, after evaluation of the tenders, was Kerwood Lydell from Victoria, and they proposed to use the Water Audit and Loss Control Programme Manual from M36 from the American Water Works Association. What did we do? It was a 2-stage process. The first stage was to identify a desktop study, which was a top-down analysis, which was an analysis of the data. And then the second stage was to validate the stage 1 information by doing some field work. Typical examples were shown in the pictures. We tested residential meters, which is the photo on your right. On your photo on your left, we tested commercial meters, and we also tried to validate our bulk water meters, which is the picture in the middle. So how did our trend look? This interesting graph shows you 2 important points. Our peak demand, which is highlighted in purple, and the average annual demand, which is the darker blue. The interesting point to note is the dotted line, the red dotted line at the top of the graph, identifies the trend of peak demands. And over the 7-year period, the trend is on a downward angle, which means we're doing well to conserve water. The average demand is also on a downward trend, but not as steep. It's shown as the solid red line. Now, this was interesting to note that the demands are dropping, even though we had an increase in population of 6,772 during the same 7-year period. How does Nanaimo's figure stack up? Well, as you can see from the chart, the total water use, which is industrial, commercial, institutional and residential water, we got 492 litres per person per day, and that compares favourably to Canada and the provincial average. In addition, the residential-only water use of 251 litres is also, as you can see, below the Canadian and provincial averages. We do, however, have a lot of work to do if we wish to get as low as the Western Europeans in the Netherlands, who have 124 litres per person.
Well done.
And focusing on our residential use, we had, as I said, 251 litres per person per day. That compared favourably, in addition to the Capital Regional District in Victoria of 297 litres per person. But more importantly, in residential use, is the amount of water used to irrigate during the peak summer months. We found from the audit that we had 962 litres per dwelling per day in the summer months during the audit period, and that equates to approximately 356 litres per person. And that's an awful lot of water, given that there's an awful lot of golden lawns in Nanaimo of people who don't water. And you can compare that to their indoor water use, of 198 litres per person, which occurs on the wettest, coldest December months when there's obviously no irrigation. The fundamental, most important point of the first stage of the study was to identify your water balance. Where does your water go and how much volume is used? This pie chart is a summary identifying the information. We found out from our period of the water audit from the 1st of August 2010 until the 31st of July 2011, we identified 72% revenue in our water. That's highlighted by on the perimeter with the red line. And so where did the other 28% go? We identified from our audit the residential use for multifamily dwellings and single-family dwellings accounted for 51%. The industrial and commercial and institutional accounted for 21%. Typical examples of our heavy users in Nanaimo in commercial would be the fisheries, processing plants off 10th Street, institutions that used a lot of water were Vancouver Island Health Authority and School District 68. And a typical example of an industrial heavy user would be the Coastland Veneer plant in Halliburton Street. So then the 28%, where did that go? City used 15% of water to carry out the operational duties. This included flushing of supply and distribution mains, flushing of sewers by engineering and public works, recreational facilities, the irrigation of playing fields, and for the irrigation of boulevards. In addition, there was the water used by the fire department for obviously help prevent fires, and in the fire training centre in Labio Road. The other part of the 28%, 3% were attuned to what is called metering errors. Metering errors occur when meters slowly decline in accuracy due to age. Other metering errors included human errors as a result of improper meter readings and billing errors when bills are processed. Some of our meters are in gallons, some are in cubic feet, and the majority are in cubic meters. There's also errors when you convert and you lose some water when you convert, depending on how many decimal places you take. And that gives us the last 10%, which people probably find most interesting, is we found we had 10% leakage in our water pipes.
Just like me.
So what did we do in stage 2? We decided, given our leakage was so good according to the M36 report, we identified we had to check our accuracy of our meter data. Factors affecting accuracy included the age of the meter and the size of the meter. So for the analysis, we validated the source of our bulk source meters. Our bulk source meters are meters at the source where water is treated, and that is at Reservoir 1 and Water Process Centre. We tested residential meters to gauge the relationship of their accuracy, and that's shown in the picture in the top right. We reviewed consumption records for our large meters to see if they're properly sized. We reviewed the City of Nanaimo standards to see if meter sizing was included. And then finally, we undertook some flow profiling of a random sample of commercial and business users, and that is shown in the picture in the bottom right. Our key findings from our audit were that our bulk water meters were accurate. A typical example of a bulk water meter is shown in the top left picture here, highlighted in the orange, in the red circle. The accuracy of these meters were dependent because the data given in the report all stems from the original amount of water treated, and so if the bulk water meters were inaccurate, the accuracy of the report would be in jeopardy. Our actual leakage rate, I showed you earlier, was 10%. That was rounded up, but our actual leakage rate was 9.83% of leaks. Our leakage usually occurs from main breaks, of which there was 14 during this period, and service connections, which we had 161 leaks. 50% of our industrial meters and commercial meters are oversized, which meant it picked up the high flows, but it didn't necessarily pick up all of the low flow. and the low flow was a higher percentage of water used, typically 30%, and we weren't getting the full revenue back from that. And our residential meters shown in the bottom right picture, our average age is 14 years old, they're 98% accurate. However, they lose accuracy beyond 24 years and therefore lose revenue. The last key finding was our leakage index. The infrastructure leakage index was 1.54. The infrastructure leakage index is a performance indicator quantifying how well a water system is managed, maintained, repaired or rehabilitated, and controls leakage at a current operation pressure. The AWWA guidelines suggest that any system had a infrastructure leak index less than 3.5 as shown in the red line was good, and under 2 was excellent. As you can see, the first chart here is Nanaimo. Our index is 1.54, and this is a benchmark that can be used either across Canada or internationally, that any municipality that has carried out a water audit can identify a leak index number, and so we're directly comparable. And as you can see, against other Canadian municipalities, we're doing extremely well, and it's something the citizens should be extremely proud of. Our key recommendations from our audit was to create a new manual of our engineering standards and specification section on meter sizing to enable that we got the right size of meters for our large industrial and commercial meters, to allocate funding for meter replacement, to replace older residential meters beyond the age of 24 years, and to replace oversized industrial and commercial meters. Consider a water loss management programme to address the 10% leakage that we currently have in the system, and to undertake future water audits, as this inaugural audit would be the benchmark of how well we can check out how we've improved our system or not in future. And that concludes my presentation this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. There's going to be a couple of questions. One thing that came to mind, I did have a question specific on the 10% leakage, and then after I wrote the note, you then came up with a graph that showed that. I'm kind of curious about the cities that were selected. Were they selected because they were in ascending order, or were they selected on population? What was the criteria for establishing these ones? Because the reason I'm asking, usually we find that we try to relate to British Columbia cities, Kelowna, Penticton, Prince George, Kamloops, and so on, and obviously Victoria and some of the other areas. So I was just kind of curious, when you ended up with Philadelphia at the end, I just wondered how that selection was made.
The reason I picked those were because in the 1-year period from the middle of 2010 to 2011, when the audit was carried out, the only information I could find available of comparable cities who had done a leakage infrastructure index in that same time span were the ones shown in that graph.
Okay, that's fair.
I did try to get other municipalities, but there are a significant number of municipalities in British Columbia that aren't fully water metered, so they haven't managed to address this issue yet.
Okay, and my last question is, you mentioned about testing residential water meters. There must be an awful lot of them out there.
4,202.
You tested every single one?
No, we didn't. We did a random sample.
What percentage on the sample?
A very small percentage.
Okay.
Probably 0.1%.
Yeah.
However, we did find that they were, from the percent, we found that they all under-registered. And the older the meter, the more under-registration, and that always favours the homeowner or the business. It doesn't favour the city. But we found that after the age of 24 years, we were losing revenue because of the meter inaccuracy.
Okay, I guess the reason I was asking the question, I was wondering where the samples were taken, because if you're up in College Heights, you might have a completely different pressure than somebody down right on the sea, at sea level, but presumably that's adjusted for. And so I'm just wondering if those meters, because of height, I guess, maybe would be impacted negatively.
What we did was we selected at random, given the data that we had from the finance user rates, we selected random meters of various ages across various points in the city. We then removed those meters and replaced it with a brand new meter. We then took those old meters back and we tested them in public works at a low pressure of 40 litres per second, a medium pressure and a high pressure, volume. And then we tested the accuracy that way and found that in some instances the meters didn't even record the initial 40 litres that we put through them. They recorded nothing. So that highlighted that the lower flows, we weren't picking them up.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Wilson. We have some questions. Councillor Kipp.
Oh, thank you very much. Do we use American Water and Wastewater Association standards for all of our water infrastructure, our drinking water plant, our metering, everything?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you. And the water loss, 10%, that's amazing. Why would we, that's really good for a system.
That is very good.
I think it is really, and the city used 15%. That's the
correct.
firefighters throwing water out on the street all over the place, wasting it and that. Okay, thank you. Bulk water meters, is our whole city bulk water metered and divided up into bulk water meter areas?
No, the bulk water meters are the meters at the water source, so that is at Water Process Centre and Reservoir 1. Any other commercial, industrial, institutional premises have a larger water meter, and the larger water meter is anything over 2 inch, and there's 577 of those.
Thank you. And we're getting some neighborhood water metering too, you talked about?
You want, Bill? Do you want?
Like separating sections of the community with metering too?
Last slide has the
But all the communities currently metered.
I don't want to see what he's recommending.
Well, so what I'm saying is there the ability to isolate an area so you have one big meter, it goes into that area, and you can tell that we're losing water in that area more readily?
You could do that by doing some nighttime flow analysis. That's how to evaluate if we want to go for the 10% leakage rate that we currently have. You would shut off sections of the city like you suggested, and then you usually do it between the hours of 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. at night, and then you test for leakage that way to see, put it through 1 meter source and see what the losses are.
So we'd find out if Bevan Park was leaking the pool or those type of things. You can isolate to that.
That's how we do it.
One more follow-up if I can. Difference now between mechanical water meters and the new type of aerial read, drone read meters. Is there much of a difference? Are they more accurate?
All new water meters with newer technology, whether they're residential or industrial, are more accurate at a lower flow. The radio read meters take out the error that you might have a human error in a manual read meter. Because some of the older meters on manual read meters, the casing on the top is perished, and when it perishes it cracks and it leads to condensation, and basically the meter reader goes down and looks and it could be an 8, it could be a 3. So that error is taken away if you have a touch read meter or a radio read meter.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mine is on meter replacement as well. Do we not have a meter replacement in place right now?
Yes, we do. We have a small amount of money which we currently do a meter replacement, but if we carry out our current meter replacement procedures and timelines, it would take 33 years to replace our residential meters. But we found out through this study that they're inaccurate beyond the 24 years. So our recommendation was we should, if we can, allocate additional funding to what we already have to catch up that 9-year difference, because in theory you'd be losing revenue.
Okay. Would you know, or would Ms. Cliff know, how much funding would be required to do this the way you want to do that?
We are still trying to evaluate what that sum of money is. We know what we currently allocate, but then we have to take away from that. When we do any new construction, the city replaces water meters on a new main that's already getting done, so we need to take away meters that are already getting put in the ground, plus the meter replacement programme, plus the water operations carry out daily to repair meters that we've had calls from that they're leaking or have issues with.
Okay. And the last question, Your Worship, if I may. You mentioned an average lifespan of 14 years for residential ones. Is there better technology now that would give us meters that last longer than 14 years?
Well, our average age is 14 years currently. The new meters that have came out now are becoming made of a composite plastic, so they're taking away the brass because the American Water Works Association have indicated as of the 1st of January 2014, brass would be not in any drinking water source. So these new plastic-bodied ones apparently have better technology and are more accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Johnstone.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. My question has been addressed. But just quickly, now that I have the floor, is this a sign that we have in any of our public parks, or?
No, we don't.
It's
This
just-
is
it's
a
just
sign that I found rather intriguing and interesting, and I digitally enhanced it.
Oh,
It's
okay.
to include, it was from the City of Olympia in Washington State, and to promote their conservation efforts and keep brown lawns, they issue erect signs like that to show the residents that they're keeping it green for a reason, keeping it brown, sorry, for a reason.
Thank you.
We have one more question, but before, is it possible, Mr. Wilson, to go back one slide? I think you had some recommendations on the previous one. Yeah, these are the recommendations. Some of the councillors wanted to look at that again, and Councillor Brennan, you're on.
Thank you, Your Worship. The question I have is on the 1% increase to sort of finance that, the replacement, and was it replacement?
Well,
You use that figure?
well, you just replace older meters, or the oldest set of meters that we have that are older than, because some of our meters are, I think the oldest 36 years old.
So you used a figure of a 1% increase. I thought you said
No fighting, no fighting.
okay, so that was okay.
Well, I was just going to say, Your Worship, that it probably, we'll do some research on it, but probably won't require an increase because there'll be increased revenues from having more accurate meters. So it's likely that the investment in a meter replacement program would be easily funded by the additional revenues that would accrue to the city by having accurate readings. But we'll do some work on that before the next
Okay, I
budget.
thought we were facing another 1% tax increase.
Okay. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate the information. Just one quick question as it relates to irrigation of boulevards, and I trust that that's a standard that the city sets in relation to boulevard enhancements and et cetera, which includes irrigation. And I'm just wondering about new technology methods in which to utilize groundwater versus irrigated boulevards, irrigated medians, and along those lines. Do you have any, I don't see any recommendations as it relates to where there could be a potential savings in that area beyond water, the maintenance of the irrigation lines themselves, the heads getting knocked off, the times that they go on in the middle of, potentially a rainy period, et cetera. So I'm just wondering if that's something that might be considered in the water audit recommendations, or if that is a separate item entirely.
Your Worship, maybe I'll just respond before Ewan does, and that is to say that it's probably a little unfair for Ewan because the Parks, Rec and Culture Department is the main user of water for our irrigation, and they'd be responsible as the user and the consumer of the water and the payer of the bill, if you like, for making sure that conservation is undertaken as part of our irrigation program. So even though I'm sure Ewan's interested in it, it's probably a question for our Parks and Rec people first.
Okay, I'll direct that to our Parks and Rec people.
Tom's here. I don't know if you can answer it now, Tom.
Maritan, in answer to Councillor Bestwick's question, for medians and boulevards, I think Councillor Bestwick is right. We're looking at ways to naturalize those medians, pick plants that are more hardy, but we still have a number of medians that do get irrigated. Most of those, a number of those medians are metered, so we'd be more concerned with the metering of them. Councillor Bestwick has a good point. How can we get to a point where we're really using less water on those? So we need to do more work on that and continue to improve what we do.
Thank you. And just a follow-up to that, if I may, to staff, Your Worship, could you potentially give me the estimate on our new Bowen Road portion that we just undertook, the cost to irrigate the boulevards in that section?
Maritan through to Councillor Bestwick. I could get back to you on that information, but I don't have that specifically, but we could send out a note and get some information to you.
It is relatively significant.
I would say in the few $1,000s per year for irrigation, but let me check on that.
And the cost to irrigate?
Irrigation, I would...
The cost to run the irrigation and the heads and all, et cetera. Yeah.
The capital cost to run the irrigation, I could get to you. That would probably be in the tens of thousands of dollars, and the annual irrigation cost is probably in the thousands of dollars.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Very interesting presentation. We'll move along now to item number 8A, and that's the 2013 Community Service Grants. Purposes to obtain council approval for the allocation of the first round of 2013 Community Service Grants, and the committee recommendation is that council approve the motion to allocate the first round of the 2013 Community Service Grants as noted below. There's a fairly horrendous list. So we'll see. Mr. Kenning, is this something that should be read out, do you think?
I don't think it's necessary, Your Worship, but it's up to you. There's only 7 that are actually recommended for award, so it might be positive to list those ones.
So we'll start off with the Columbian Center Society, Neighbors Being Neighbors Summer Community Gathering. The amount requested was $2,500, $2,500, and the amount recommended was the same, $2,500. Nanaimo Women's Resource Society, Go Girl Program, requested $3,000 and recommended $3,000. The Nanaimo Disability Resource Center to purchase JAWS, JAWS computer software for blind computer users. $1,400 was the request, and $1,400 was the grant. The Nanaimo Salvation Army lunch program, $1,000 was requested and $1,000 was recommended. The Nanaimo Region John Howard Society Community Dental Program, CODE, $2,000 requested, $2,000 was recommended. The Nanaimo Citizen Advocacy Association Outreach Program, the request was for $6,250, and the grant was awarded at $1,350. And the final one was the Mid-Island Métis Nation Replace Office Equipment, $1,250 request and $1,250 grant. Without going into specifics, I'll just quickly read the list of those that also applied that did not receive funding. The Nanaimo Disability Resource Center, Altrusa Club of Nanaimo, the Nanaimo Community Kitchen Society, the Nanaimo Men's Resource Center, St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church, the Nanaimo Family Life Association, Mid-Island Abilities and Independent Living Society, BC Old Age Pensioners Branch Number 4, Tillicum Aboriginal Friendship Center, Bethlehem Retreat Center, Nanaimo Food Share Society, People for a Healthy Community Gabriola Island, that's for the Aging Well Workshop Series, and People for a Healthy Community Gabriola Island for Affordable Housing Initiative. So all those groups had requested funding, and at this point they were denied. We'll move into item B, Community Heritage Register.
We have to move in second.
Do you want to do all these at
I'll
one time?
move at the recommendation.
Just go right through them and just do it as a block. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Councillor Anderson moved.
Yes.
Councillor Patchy second.
Then I have a question.
I already.
Councillor
I beat you.
Patchy. Councillor Anderson's first, and then Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Under the background, I wasn't at this meeting, so I direct the question to Councillor Brennan. Under it says enhancing the social inclusion of people within the community, such as seniors, persons with disabilities, new arrivals to Canada, low-income adults between 22 to 40 years of age, and individuals of Aboriginal ancestry. And I was just curious about the applicant, Mid-Island Métis Nation, and the funds to be used for replacement of office equipment, and how that promoted the priorities that were set out by SPAC.
The funds were requested, it says office equipment, but in fact what it is a computer. They don't have a method of contacting everyone that needs to be contacted when they're putting out newsletters, when they're contacting people, when they're organizing, and they don't have any paid staff, so it was determined that that was an excellent way of them communicating with their membership, and so the whole committee, this was unanimous, agreed that that would meet the criteria.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Richard. Well, I get to ask this question once a year, and it's in connection with the Nanaimo Men's Resource Centre, who in the 4 years that I've been on council have yet to get something of substance, except maybe once. So my question is, what is the criteria that is being used that leaves them out of the loop one more time?
Well, the criteria is really clear when we send out the request for proposals. This proposal that came back, the committee reviewed it and I think put a lot of effort into considering it. But it was felt that the clothing service that they have is a service that is found in other organizations, and the supervised access program wasn't considered to meet the criteria. If the courts have determined that if the courts have determined that a child has access to a parent only under supervision, we don't think that that's part and parcel of the mandate of that committee to give out funds. And in fact, that's who the access belongs to, the child.
Okay, thank you.
Now, Councillor Brennan, you didn't have any other comment to make on this thing. You're on the show's on speaker. So, Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to point out to the public that there's a total of $25,000 a year to be granted, done in 2 disbursements, one in the spring and one in September, and that in this first round, of which there were $12,500 available, there was $146,900 in requests. I just wanted the public to know that.
Well, that's significant. One particular organization had submitted a request for $80,000, just one group. So it's a difficult decision, and I do want to comment on the fact that to those people, and certainly Councillor Brennan, who sits on the committee and has to go through and make these difficult decisions, we appreciate it, because it's not an easy decision to make, and they're all worthy. There's no question about that. It's just how much money is available to distribute. But a good point, Councillor McKay.
Your Worship?
Yes.
I would just add to that it took at least 3 hours for us to disperse $12,500, and that's how much consideration each grant application was given.
Wow. Thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move into item B, and it's a Community Heritage Register update, and this will be introduced by the Nanaimo Community Heritage Commission Chair, Councillor Brennan.
I would just move the Commission recommendation that Council adopt the amended Community Heritage Register by adding the following properties: Nanaimo Military Camp, Building 613, John Johnston Residence at 407 McCleary, Beaver Potts Residence at 627 Millstone, Leonard Residence at 442 Milton, and Robbins Park at 620 Park Avenue.
Okay, and you're moving that. Is there a second or seconded? Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Development permit DP 000825 at 20 Townsite Road. Purpose is to obtain council authorization to issue a development permit for a moorage office with 1 variance. Staff recommendation that council issue the development variance permit as described at 20 Townsite Road with the following variance. The required watercourse setback from Newcastle Channel is 15 meters. The proposed setback is 0 meters, a proposed variance of 15 meters. Move. Is there a seconder? Move. Did you second it? Have you got a seconder? Okay. Would someone like to second it? Thank you. Discussion on this, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. Just questioning the staff that this is simply serving as an office gatehouse. It's not anything beyond that in terms of residents or otherwise?
No, that's correct, Councillor Bestwick. It's a gatehouse at the top of the ramp leading down onto the floats.
Thank you.
And if I can, the purpose of this is for sales, is it?
It's
The actual
to
purpose
keep
of the structure?
I believe so. It's to, as people arrive at the wharf and so on, it's to control the access to the wharf.
Okay. Councillor Kipp.
Did this building, the building is attached, you ever apply for a building permit?
I believe there's a history on it, but it was before my time in Nanaimo, so I can't
Parent
comment.
asking
That's why I
questions?
looked.
I already know the answer for it. Yeah, I know. Okay. They've applied for a permit, building permit, everything with us now on those water leases. They all do now. This building went in a long time ago, I think, without a building permit.
I know there was discussion with the Port Authority about the appropriate application of development cost charges.
I remember what side of that we were.
I was there. yeah. What an agitator. Anyway, the issue of the day was it was on a filled water lot, and I think the Port Authority was under the impression that they could grant it. I think there's a better understanding now between the Port and the City on issues that are related to situations much like that. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Oh, so, I'm sorry, Councillor Greaves, I beg your pardon. We'll have to come back to you. Councillor Greaves, you're on.
Thank you, Worship.
Sorry.
To staff, I had a heck of a time finding out or figuring out where this thing was. Is it on the south or north or of this? I could not read the diagram or the.
It's on the south. It's on the south side of the building.
South side?
Yes.
Okay.
It says south elevation right here.
Oh, is that what it says? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kipp. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Development variance permit DVP 00209 at 2468 Kenworth Road. The purpose is to obtain council authorization to proceed with a statutory notification for an application to vary the provisions of signed bylaw 1987 number 2850 in order to allow for the placement of 4 freestanding signs on the subject property. And the staff recommendation of the council directs staff to proceed with the required statutory notification for the development variance permit as described at 2468 Kenworth Road. And it's my understanding that's the new dealership, car dealership there.
Move staff's recommendation.
Moved. Second, Councillor Kipp.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I noticed on its page, I believe, 62, the site plan. The site plan's dated back in 2011, I think like January 2011, and these signs are noted in yellow on that plan I notice here. They've been highlighted. I don't know if they've been highlighted. How come this is now coming forward now? It seems like it's taken a long time. Is there... I mean, I know this is a property thing, and this has got to do with the corridor foundation and stuff, or how does this one work?
Mr. Tucker? Oh, sorry. Are you going to do it, Mr. Tucker?
Unless Mr. Seward wants to do it.
One of my points is they want to open up. I've had contact with the developers.
Both microphones are on, so you guys can...
They want to open up their business. They're having a grand opening really soon, and they think this could be a how-many-week process for this. And I don't know. I'm wondering why these are on the plans and how come this gets to this point with it. What's happened?
Your Worship, to Councillor Kipp, the plans were developed in 2011, and the designer or architect had put the signs on the plans at the time, but they didn't, until the process is much further along, apply for the sign permits. And when they created these plans for a development permit, we advised them they'd have to get sign permits at the time. I, too, have talked to the contractor, and they are anxious to put these signs up, but I said it has to go through this 2-step process, and the next, it will have to come back on May 13th for final approval before council can authorize it. They could put one of the signs up on Kenworth right now. That meets the bylaw, but they are applying for the 4.
This seems to have a big, it's $10 million construction site. They're going to have a grand opening. People come from all over. It'd be nice to have the signs up too.
Go ahead, Mr. Decker.
One of the factors in this is originally the lot was going to be subdivided so that each dealership had its own lot, and they've since decided to do it as a single entity. And had there been individual lots, the variance wouldn't have been required, but because they are keeping it as a single lot for all the dealerships, that's why we have to go through a variance process.
Okay. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. A comment and a question. Well, I figured I'd never see the day that I would be voting in favor of 4 signs where one is allowed, but the day has arrived, I think. Whether this is subdivided or not, it still looks like 4 separate entities, and so I have no particular problem with that. One more question to staff, which is on page 64, where the BMW Mini signage is. There's no height. So is that the same height as the other 3?
Yes, it's within the height bylaw required by the sign bylaw.
Okay. But I guess all 4 signs will be exactly the same height? This is a matter of interest?
As Councillor Patchy said, it's not on the plans. I can't determine that for sure, but that's my understanding. They want to keep uniformity for all the signs.
Okay.
Okay, then one follow-up, if I may. Some time ago, Harris Mitsubishi got permission from the ENN railway people to put cars on ENN land. And one of the results is that there is Harris Mitsubishi advertising in front of what is now going to be BMW with a BMW sign. So how do we prevent that people buy the wrong car? They want a Mitsubishi and they end up with a BMW.
Wasn't this something that we were referring, I know, but referring back to ICF because I think the Island Quarter Foundation were really going to be involved with this dispute, because actually the property involved where those cars are parked is on an area that's administered by them. But I'll stand corrected if someone else wants to.
Yes, Your Worship. It's the bylaw allows for the display of vehicles in front of an adjacent dealership, and the adjacent dealership can be the same dealership or it can be another dealership, but it has to be adjacent to, and that is up to the ICF to deal with its leaseholders on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. I'll start with, I thought when we addressed that with the ICF as it related, that the fence line essentially would be enforced, and once the lease expired with ICF, that property line, if you will, would essentially be a continuum. Is it still in that discussion stage, or am I hearing that where those vehicles are currently parked, which, to Councillor Patchy's point, is in front of the new dealership, will that change or will that remain?
Your Worship, at the time, this becomes an enforcement issue for council on other people's property, being ICFs, and the decision was made, and council concurred, that it would be up to ICF how they lease the property, so they can choose where, whose property it might be in front of. Council enabled the zoning to allow it to happen.
Thank you. And my understanding is that they would continue to administer, but would take that consideration into moving forward on the property line. That was my understanding.
My recollection was there was quite a lot of opposition to one of the current leaseholders for that, and no direction was provided from council with respect to that.
Thank you. And my final point, Your Worship, is that I really appreciate the scope and the detail of the manner in which this was presented to us from the proponent. Nice to see it well laid out and appointed and easy to define versus black and white, and maybe this probably helps Councillor Greaves to be able to define. It's not black and white, but so I appreciate the work that was put into this presentation. Thank you.
Mr. Swaby, I might just add that, I don't know what value it is, but add that ICF actually are paid. This isn't a service they're providing. They're not providing free parking. So there is some type of payment involved by the dealership to ICF, and the City of Nanaimo does not receive any funding from the cars for that display purpose.
You're correct, Your Worship, and the beauty of this is that the assessment authority picks up on the lease arrangement and taxes the leaseholder accordingly, or the owner accordingly, so we do get taxes for this use.
Tax on it, right. Okay, Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I recall, during the discussion with when Graham Bruce was here, and we asked specifically the question, should we regulate it or are you going to regulate it? He was quite clear.
Okay. Okay, we'll show that he owns the railway. We just let the record show that Councillor Greaves has absented himself on a perceived conflict of interest.
Thank you, Your Worship. He was quite clear that the ICF would never grant leases in front of a competitor's lot. So I would suspect that this is simply an oversight, and perhaps we should have some contact with the ICF when we granted permission to permit the use on those spaces. We did so based on the fact that they wouldn't be in front of competing dealerships. And that dealership was not built at that time. It was under construction. So I think it's time for us to notify the ICF that we would expect, based on what they told us, that they would not permit competitors' dealers or competitors' vehicles parked in front of a new lot, such as this.
Your Worship, that can happen if council directs us to do that, but I would point out that ICF probably has lease obligations that would have to be fulfilled under their current obligations.
Well, they may very well have, but they assured us that they wouldn't do that. And they knew full well at the time this lot was under construction.
I think what Mr. Swaby was saying is that these predate and that in future they'll probably take your recommendations under advisement, but these leases predate. And I know that there was a delegation from another car dealer at the time who was very insistent that his lease be honored.
Well, just following up, if I can, on Councillor McKay's point, would it be wrong for us, Mr. Kenning, would it be wrong for us to send a letter down to ICF advising of the concern we have in this particular site and ask them what their decision will be on it and how they intend to handle it? It's their responsibility.
Yeah, my recommendation is that Council left this as a responsibility of the ICF, certainly has provided input, but the ICF are the landowners. We've provided the regulatory authority for cars to be there, and it's their land, and they're making those determinations. I'm not sure whether the city has the authority under the current zoning to actually direct them. It's their choice.
Okay. Councillor McKay?
Yes, supplemental. On this one here, Mr. Seward suggested that they would not be permitted to erect until after it's gone through this process. Is there any mechanism in place through the staff, any mechanism in place that, due to whatever the circumstances might be, that we grant a temporary permit pending the process?
I'll start off, and then Mr. Seward can add if he feels I missed anything. They're currently allowed 2 signs on the property, so they can go ahead and build those. Now, it's the additional, they're allowed 1 sign because they aren't subdividing. So the applicant has just informed me that they are asking for an occupancy for one of the buildings on Friday, and that'll run its course for being approved. And then another building will be asked for occupancy in a week's time, and then it'll be another month before some of the other buildings on site are asked for occupancy. So they have the ability to get going on one of the signs, and the other ones would have to wait until council adjudicates them at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Johnston.
Well, thank you, Worship. Through you to staff, a quick question. Originally, when subdivision was going to take place, the design panel endorsed the sign pylons. Have they endorsed the pylons with this new development?
No,
For all 4 dealerships?
Your Worship, nothing has changed. It's just the only thing that's changed is they're not subdividing, so the variances.
So they've all been.
They've always proposed the number of signs, but the number of variances has doubled because they're not subdividing.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bestwick.
Worship, this is a follow-up to Councillor McKay. So, if I understand correctly, it's a 2-step process, and in that process, they have to have an occupancy permit before they can commence the 2-step process? Is that what I understood you to say?
No, Your Worship, you're currently the owner is currently allowed 1 pylon sign.
Right.
The process for getting a variance is a two-step process. It requires council to authorize us today, if you like, to proceed with the notification of which we put in the newspaper. That provides the community an opportunity to come and advise you whether they think it's a good idea or a bad idea at the next council meeting, and then you make a decision on the variance request.
So then once again, there's no possibility for a conditional sign?
That would be very risky because in advance of the public input, I'd strongly recommend that council not proceed in the event that I think council's anxious for process to be followed and due process and allow the public their opportunity for a say. If council authorized a temporary permit, the public came in, you wanted to change your mind, we'd have a big bill to deal with.
On the basis of a temporary?
Well, somebody would have a big bill.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Brennan.
Well, in addition, I guess I would think that there could be an argument made if a temporary permit were granted that the public hearing was of very little value to council if that was done, and so I think that would be a mistake. And I would just be a lot more comfortable if we left this applicant to deal with any problems that they encounter, that they themselves go to ICA, the Island Corridor Foundation, or come to council asking for temporary permits. That I would feel a lot better about our processes if we did that. I haven't seen them here. I'm not aware that they've requested these things, so I'm not sure that it's our place to be arguing on their behalf.
Yeah, valid point. Okay, Councillor Kipp.
Well, it's Councillor Greaves is here. This is the problem we have where we have a person on the committee that can't speak to us because of a conflict. We can't ask the person who's on the committee some of the information on that, and that's a problem for me. But that's it.
Okay, but I think there was a legal opinion obtained, and so, we want to... Huh?
I don't believe every lawyer.
No, I know. Well, I'm not suggesting that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that obviously Councillor Greaves needs to decide, in the interest of what he is told. At least I assume he would, and that's his decision to make. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We go over page 2E, housing agreement, rooming house at 545 Haliburton Street. Purpose to present a housing agreement bylaw that will permit a rooming house with 15 sleeping units at 545 Haliburton Street. And the staff recommendation is that council receive the information for the report pertaining to housing agreement bylaw 2013 number 7166, and there's a bylaw that follows. So. Move the staff recommendation. I see no questions on this thing. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We're going into the bylaw. Would somebody like to move?
Move the house.
Move first one.
Bylaw 2013 number 7166, pass first reading.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
The housing agreement bylaw 2013 number 7166, pass second reading.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
The housing agreement bylaw 2013 number 7166, pass third reading.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into structural removal order at 115 Strickland Street. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to the structural removal order at 115 Strickland Street. And the purpose is to obtain council's authorization to enforce City of Nanaimo Building Bylaw 2003 number 5693 for works constructed without a building permit and considered to be unsafe. Is there anyone in attendance tonight that would like to speak to matters related to 115 Strickland Street? Hearing none, if somebody would like to move the staff recommendation. Okay, and the staff recommendation that council, pursuant to section 7.2 and 7.3 of the community charter, resolve that 1, the construction that was completed without a building permit, namely the dormer addition, the carport, and the deck to the dwelling located at 115 Strickland Street and legally described as Lot A, Section 1, Nanaimo District Plan 40198, is considered to be or creates an unsafe condition, And as such, 2, the owner is hereby ordered to remediate or remove the structure within 30 days on receipt of notice of this order. And 3, if such an action is not undertaken, council may direct city staff or its authorized agents to undertake the remedial action at the owner's expense. And 4, if these expenses are unpaid at December 31 of the year in which the remedial action is done, shall form part of the taxes payable in respect to the real property in question as taxes in arrears, or be collected as debt. It's been moved, I believe, and it's seconded. Any discussion on this? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We're moving into item G, the growing and production of medical marijuana. The purpose is to amend zoning bylaw 2011, number 4500, in order to permit the growing and production of marijuana for medical purposes in the industrial I-4 zone. Staff recommendation that council receive the information on the report pertaining to zoning amendment bylaw 2013, number 4500.039, and there are bylaws that follow. Someone would like to move the motion?
Seconded, dude.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Now the bylaw.
I move that zoning amendment bylaw 2013 485 to amend zoning bylaw 4500 to allow marijuana growing and production as a permitted use in the industrial I-4 zone as first reading.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Move that zoning amendment bylaw 2013 number 4500.039 pass second reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Property Maintenance Bylaw 1990, number 3704. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to the property maintenance for the properties listed below. And the staff recommendation of the council pursuant to the Property Maintenance Bylaw 1990, number 3704, direct the owners of the following properties to remove the materials as listed below from the premises within 14 days, or the work will be done by the city or its agents at the owner's cost. Number 1, if anyone here in the audience is reading along on the agendas, number 1 and 2 have been removed. They've been pulled from it, so we're going to deal with the third item, which is 779 Townsite Road, tree pruning debris, yard waste, miscellaneous debris. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to matters related to 779 Townsite Road? The next property is 281 Catherine Place, discarded appliances, carpet, automobile parts, garden clippings, household garbage, miscellaneous debris. I think some of the pictures are on the screen above you or behind you, depending on where you're seated. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to matters related to 281 Catherine Place? The next property is 635 Farquhar Street, Blackberry Bushes. There's the blackberry bushes. Is there any in attendance that would like to speak to matters related to 635 Farquhar Street? The next property is 3807 Morris Place, graffiti on the fence. Is there anyone in attendance tonight that would like to speak to matters related to 3807 Morris Place? And the final property is 3390 Departure Bay Road, garbage, mattresses, furniture, old lumber, old clothes, miscellaneous debris. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to matters related to 3390 Departure Bay Road? And seeing none, if somebody would like to move the staff recommendation.
I'll move them to be seriatim, or at least remove one of them. I think there's a conflict of interest with the Island Corridor Foundation. Item 635 Farquhar Street.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll remove that one now and deal with it last.
Okay, so do you want to deal with
all
items?
the other issues except for that one.
Okay. And is there a seconder for that one? Discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And now 635 Farquhar Street, the Blackberry Bushes.
So moved.
Moved and seconded.
Well, this group's causing us some trouble.
Wait till the door closes first. Okay, this is... Yes, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Oh, heavens, that's quickly. Okay, unresolved building deficiencies, notice on title section 5.7. It's requested that the council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to unresolved building deficiencies for the properties listed below. Staff recommendation that council by resolution instruct the corporate officer to file a bylaw contravention notice respecting the properties listed below at the Land Title and Survey Authority of the British Columbia under section 5.7 of the Community Charter. The first property is 2110 Northfield Road, illegal construction to attach attach a garage to an existing building without a building permit. Is there anyone in attendance who'd like to speak to matters related to 110 Northfield Road? The second property is 1531 Briarley Hill, illegal secondary suite, construction of a secondary suite without a building permit. Anyone in attendance tonight that'd like to speak to matters related to 1531 Briarley Hill? And the final property is 412 Sea Line Place, illegal construction, illegal secondary suite, construction to finish an unfinished basement, and build a secondary suite without a building permit. Is there anyone in attendance that'd like to speak to matters related to 412 Sea Line Place? Seeing none, if somebody would like to move the staff recommendation.
Staff's recommendation.
Second. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Move into now 9A and delegations pertaining to the 2013-2017 financial plan. And seeing none, item B has been pulled, the communication plan, and so we'll move into 9C, financial plan amendment bylaw 7162.01, and tax rates bylaw number 7167. The purpose is to introduce financial plan amendment bylaw 2013 number 7162.01 and the tax rates bylaw 2013 number 7167. Councillor Bestwick. Oh, but let's. Could we get a motion? Could we get it on the floor to start with? Sorry. Moved and seconded. Councillor Bestwick. Sorry.
Thank you, Worship. This is one of our final opportunities to address the 5-year financial plan and more specifically the 2013. We have sat patiently through a procedure and a process that has addressed and identified department by department PowerPoint presentations that have identified areas of opportunity, have expressed the increases and the demands that are placed on our community and the decisions that we have to make, and which I think is perhaps the most important decision that we make on an annual basis is adopting our financial plan. We just learned earlier this evening about a $12,500 award with a $150,000 plus or minus request on the first round of the grants that were put forward, and indeed there will be another, and I'm sure that there'll be another six-figure request that we'll only be able to address with a small amount. I don't see it any different from household to household, and I don't see it any different from now going through this new process, what I would consider a new process that we've undertaken. And with that in mind, we've listened to delegations, we've listened to the community at large, we've all been on the streets, and we've paid attention to our community. I learned several weeks ago that this budget is ours. It's ours to address, it's ours to amend, it's ours to approve, it's ours to adopt. When I say ours, council, mayor and council. So with that said, several weeks ago we also wished to try to find a 5% or thereabouts reduction, which was not approved to be proceeded upon. And so with that in mind, I have placed before my colleagues an opportunity to reduce the budget with across the board fairly and equitably to most departments, if not all, including council and our excluded staff, to a $2.2 million reduction, plus whatever the 1% reduction on base salaries of excluded staff and council would work out to be. And I present that to in the best interests of our community for sustainability, for opportunities moving forward to be responsible to our citizens and our taxpayers, to ensure that we do everything possible within our means in order to continue to make Nanaimo affordable, to live in and affordable to invest in. And I have identified items A to H, Your Worship, with bullet points. They go from police and protective services to public works and engineering to parks and recreation to strategic relations to purchasing to corporate services, human resources, property and real estate, and other, which may be defined as a capital item for the Boxwood Connector program. So my colleagues have this placed before them, and I would so move, Your Worship, that we discuss and or adopt these items as presented. I would recommend that we adopt.
Second motion.
But the motion on the floor, Mr. Howitt, is...
Your Worship, it's the staff recommendation that council approve the City of Nanaimo's... Oh, I'm sorry, wrong one. To receive
it's
the
9A, isn't it?
Yeah. 9C.
9C, I beg your pardon. Okay. So we'll either have to defeat the motion or approve it as council wishes. And then if it's defeated, then Councillor Bestwick can bring back his recommendation and see what level of support would be there.
If I may, Your Worship, yep. We certainly may receive the report for information, which is why I brought this forward before we get to adopting the bylaws, so that it is in the right position in order to discuss and debate and or table to a future meeting.
Okay. Mr. Howitt, you're reaching for the button. Were you going to say something?
Your Worship, I was just going to say that council could certainly entertain the received motion, and as Councillor Bestwick mentioned, then entertain his motion following the receipt of the report.
Okay, but at this point, all we've done, there's been a motion to receive, but we haven't gone into the bylaws yet.
No.
Correct.
Okay, we have, Councillor Kipp, you finished, I think? No? You're going to start?
I mean, are we talking now on just receiving? Well, okay, yep. So I'll receive.
Councillor Brennan.
No, I'm happy to receive the report.
Okay, and then someone else took theirs off. So the motion now is the one on the floor, obviously, which is just to receive the information, the report containing the financial plan amendment bylaw 2013-7162.01 and the tax rates bylaw 2013 number 7167. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Now we move into the bylaws, and we can, if somebody would like to, Councillor Kipp, sorry? Did I hear a voice down there? Councillor Kipp.
Do you want to make the motion? Go ahead. Okay, Your Worship, I'd like to make a motion on some reductions, and I'd like to talk to them after I make the motions. We would like to reduce, and what we've done is reduce police and protective services by 250,000. Reduce fire services by 300,000. And I'll explain some of these. Public Works, reduce number 1 reservoir design by $250,000. Reduce the water treatment plant budget by $250,000. Parks and Recreation budget, reduce Parks and Recreation by $400,000. Reduce the spray park by $100,000. Strategic Relations, reduced by $125,000. Review the annual budget, operating budget of NEDC, but we'll talk about that after. Reduce purchasing costs by $100,000. Corporate services reduced by $100,000. Reduce excluded staff benefits by some $75,000. Human resources reduced by $75,000. Reduce council, mayor, and excluded staff by 1% of base salary. Property and real estate, redirect $250,000 from the Dufferin sale to taxes. And then we have other items, A to H, in savings to in capital. So those are some of the reductions. And if I can have a seconder, I'd like to speak to some of them.
Second. Moved and seconded. Okay.
Thank you for your indulgence. We've been told all along through our budget process that we adopted it a long time ago, and I questioned adopting it then. And we said we would listen to the reports and we could come up with changes or alterations to the budget at any time. Some of us took, Councillor Bestwick, myself, and Councillor McKay sat down and looked at some of the budgets from 2009, some of our 5-year plan analysis. We looked at some of our strategic priorities back in 2009, right through to our new strategic plan. We looked at old cuts and potential old cuts from old reports. We looked at revenue funds. We looked at mandatory services, discretionary services, and foundation services. We looked at capital. So from police, for example, we're asking $250,000 from a $25 million budget. From fire, we can reduce it by $300,000 by cutting out the design for the fire hall that's not going to be built, or it's out of a $12 million budget, $300,000. Public Works with the reservoir on that's a $26 million budget. Parks and Rec, where we've asked some $500,000, is a $26 million budget. Strategic Relations is a $7 million budget that includes payments for this building and that, but reducing that. Corporate Services is a $12 million budget. We've talked about reducing that by some $175,000. It doesn't seem like much when you count each one and the size of the budget. It means tightening the belt. It means looking at efficiencies. It's looking to our taxpayers. We've heard people ask us for individually what we would do. And this is our offer to try and reduce the budget. We can make this up with surpluses, with other methods, but these are some examples that we have, and we looked into the budget and tried to be as fair as possible, and it really works out to only a couple of % at the most. And it's not including some reduction of boxwood, the $104 million. What's that? $1.4 million, sorry. And different surplus accounts. So that's why we've moved it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bestwick, did you want to comment? Okay, I'll take you off. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Often we talk about getting reports from our staff too late as part of our amended agenda, and I don't appreciate receiving this right now, so I won't vote in favor of any of these. I would much rather actually table this until the next meeting for me to be able to look over these proposed reductions in the budget. So I would actually move right now that this be tabled until the next council meeting.
Okay, is there a seconder to move and second? So
and there's no, actually,
there is no debate on a tabling motion.
On a table.
Do we have time with our next meeting to make our budget deadline? But May 15th is our budget deadline?
Well, under the current schedule, if it's delayed, there would have to be an extra meeting added, an extraneous or additional meeting would have to be added to the schedule.
We could make the schedule.
Okay, there's a list of speakers, but it's all to do with tabling unless anyone wants to comment otherwise. I think we should vote on the tabling motion.
Is not debatable.
Yeah, well, they might want to make a comment, like, is it going to rain tomorrow? I don't know. Anyway, so on the motion to table, all those in favor? Opposed? Councillor McKay, Councillor Bestwick, Councillor Kipp opposed, balance council in favor of the motion to, it passes to postpone at this point.
Your Worship, may I ask a question then? Would the remainder of the budget bylaw be tabled by next meeting also? Make a motion to do that.
Second. Moved and seconded that the remaining, sorry, I just want to make sure staff is picking up all these things that are going along here. Okay.
So just to be clear, if this is tabled, I'm not opposed or in favor. There will have to be a special meeting added to the schedule.
If I have a question, staff?
Yep, go ahead.
If we table these bylaws now, the financial plan bylaws, first, second, and third reading, then they should be tabled till the next meeting, or should they continue? Have to be.
I don't think I'm the one to answer should. My recommendation, of course, is that the budget proceed as presented, so if council doesn't want to do that, that's your discretion.
But still, I think it's, the point is that it has been moved and voted on to refer this to the next meeting. So, I mean, obviously the remaining portions would also have to be
well, that would be up to council. Council could amend the budget at the next meeting as well, but there'd have to be a special meeting as well.
Okay, so I'm not sure where we are now. Pardon?
They voted to table, so we should...
Yeah, but I think the question was the Councillor, the tax rates and so on would also be tabled, are they not?
We just require direction on that, Your Worship.
I know. I think we do too. This is what happens with these late-minute things. It's kind of difficult to know where we are. So, Councillor Kipp, do you want to have a go?
I'll have a go.
Oh, Councillor Beswick, go ahead.
Well, it makes the motion that we just passed the table, the proposal, redundant if we deal with the financial plan amendment bylaw and pass all 3 readings. Then it warrants the previous redundant, because we're to discuss how those items may reduce the financial plan that we're potentially
I think
considering voting on. So
all items related to the financial plan have to be tabled to the next meeting.
Correct.
Someone like to have a go? Go ahead.
Your Worship, there's a motion that was made by Councillor Kipp and seconded by Councillor Beswick to table the readings of the budget bylaw tonight. So it has to be voted on still.
Yeah, but I don't believe the two of them tabled the motion, did they?
No.
Oh, the remainder of it, I'm sorry.
Following the motion that passed to table Councillor Kipp's motion, there was a subsequent motion made by Councillor Kipp and seconded by Councillor Beswick to table the readings of the bylaws.
Everyone understanding? Right. So, on the motion to table the remaining portions, all those in favor? Opposed? I maybe missed that myself here.
Well, you voted on it. It passes.
So, sorry, did you get a count on the vote?
Your Worship, I got 4 opposed.
It's 5-4.
5-4, it's tabled.
So it's tabled then?
Right.
Because I didn't have a chance to really think this thing through when it was parachuted on. I should have. But if we hadn't tabled this thing, I think we would have gone the other way. Anyway, it'll come back. We'll have another go at it once again and schedule another meeting once again, and we'll deal with it once again. So let's move on with this quarterly direct award to purchases. The purpose to comply with the Council's approved purchasing policy by reporting direct award purchases made by staff during the 3-month period covered in the staff report. The staff recognition of the Council received the information from the report regarding the quarterly direct purchases for the period January 1st, 2013 to March 31, 2013. Second, discussion. Any discussion on this one? Councillor Kipp, did you want to? Nope. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The quarterly single submission purchases, the purpose is to comply with the Council's approved purchasing policy by reporting single submission purchases made during the 3-month period covered by the staff report. The staff recognition that Council received the information, the report pertaining to the single submission purchases for the same period.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Community Services, the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association bylaws renewal process. The purpose is to obtain information regarding changes to the BIA bylaws and obtain council approval to conduct local area service on council initiatives utilizing the petition against process. And there is a delegation coming, but I have already declared the perceived conflict of interest as a property owner in the downtown core, so I will be absenting myself and turn it over to our deputy chair, acting chair, now actual chair. Do you want to sit there, or are you going to move over here?
No, I can see from here.
Okay. So,
you're on. So welcome, Mr. Cooper, to this evening's meeting.
Thank you for having me.
We look forward to your presentation.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council, or Acting Mayor and Council. My name is John Cooper. I'm the president of the DNBIA, and I wanted to update you on our plans for renewal of the BIA agreement and the bylaw before you tonight. What we are seeking for our second term is the same conditions that have guided us in our first term. We're seeking a 5-year term, not asking for any changes to the BIA boundaries or the bylaw duration. With respect to the levy, we are seeking to reduce the minimum levy by 50%. meaning fees will drop for about 80% of our members. The maximum levy amount will also be modestly increased. Keeping in mind 5 to 7 years is the most common duration for BIAs in Western Canada. Courtenay and Abbotsford, for example, both have 20-year renewals. Why does downtown Nanaimo need an improvement association? I spent the first half of last week up in Kamloops at the BIA BC conference and had the opportunity to share notes with BIAs from downtowns all over BC and Alberta, and it became very clear that every successful downtown has a BIA, and every community that is looking to make their community more attractive is working hard to establish a BIA. Nanaimo has a BIA. In fact, when we compare our downtown to other downtowns in Western Canada, it would appear that although we have similar issues, Nanaimo is generally further along the revitalization path than many others. It is critically important that we, as a city, take advantage of this head start and our leadership role in order to compete amongst the ultra-competitive cities and downtowns in Western Canada. That said, we still have a lot of work to do and are well positioned to be successful and further establish a competitive edge over some of our competing cities. Nanaimo is sitting on the brink of discovery, and strategic investments made over the last decade are starting to pay off. My dad has always said that groceries always feel heaviest when you're closer to home, and now is not the time to slow down. The DMBA is essential to downtown. In 2002, the council at that time had the foresight to adopt the downtown plan, recognizing the need for a BIA model for funding the establishment of a downtown that is well positioned to attract business, investment, and community pride. And there's a quote up there from the downtown plan. Our mandate, the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association, through long-term planning, will support businesses and preserve traditional downtown values with our strong community partners who will focus on membership-driven programs in the areas of advocacy, public safety, beautification, marketing, and events. That was the vision and mandate established by our board of directors at the last strategic plan. There are 4 pillars that make up our BIA, and that's marketing, events, beautification, and safety and security. It's hard to imagine what downtown looked like 6 or 7 years ago. If you were to walk through, you would have been met with empty storefronts, prostitution, drug dealing, homeless, as well as aging building facades. Our programs, projects, and partnerships have been integral in the success of our downtown to date. Today, as you walk along our downtown streets, one is met with a healthy and growing mix of businesses, vibrant business frontages, and public spaces that are inviting and accessible to public and families. One of the most profound findings in our recent market research has been major improvements in perceptions about public safety in downtown Nanaimo. Proof of our performance, I'll just outline some of our successes over the last few years of our organization's existence. We managed a co-op advertising program leveraging merchant advertising dollars at a 2-to-1 ratio, saving our merchants $32,000 in advertising expenses. We've implemented a delegate and visitor welcome program for cruise ship passengers entering our city, conference delegates, and air travelers. We've developed a parking information program to create awareness about the 2,600 parking spaces that exist downtown, and we've dramatically increased communication with our merchants. In terms of events, we've produced 6 signature events, bringing in approximately 21,000 visitors into our downtown, provided event sponsorship and support for a variety of third-party event promoters. We've developed an event kit sponsorship program that assists nonprofits in conducting downtown events. We've hosted 24 member networking and marketing events over the last 12 months and coordinated over 1,000 volunteers hours invested in events only in the last 12 months. In terms of beautification, you've probably heard a lot about our Terminal Nickel Street Brownfield study that recently won a provincial award from BIA BC. This initiative was recognized by BIAs all over Western Canada as an outstanding achievement in program excellence. There's a few other of our beautification successes on the screen as well. Our cooperative nighttime security program enables our members to have an extra layer of protection at night at an affordable rate, as well as working collaboratively with both the RCMP, the Bar Watch program, and the municipal bylaw ambassadors. In terms of our strategic community partners, the DMBA has been reaching out to our community partners, and all of the work we do is connected to our community partners listed above, to name but a few. I would encourage you to talk to your allies in leadership roles within these organizations and ask them about the positive and collaborative nature of our relationships. Given the lean economic environment, all of these organizations recognize that the synergies of working together far outweigh any benefit of protecting our independence working in silos. Some of our most recent member surveys and input of that of the community and our members have showed a few trends. Some of the most attractive features of our downtown that people are currently communicating to our surveyors are the reasons why they go downtown or for that downtown experience. Walking, jogging, strolling the waterfront, the heritage and character of the neighborhoods, the abundance of local shops, the dining, arts, entertainment, festivals, and special events. That said, we all know we have things that we need to work on. Preliminary information coming from our ongoing public and member consultation indicates that parking and communications are areas that need improvement. We've made great strides in the last 3.5 years creating parking awareness for a more positive experience, recognizing that there's much to be done to improve parking downtown in the way that we communicate to our members. We are continually working on ways to improve and are excited to move forward with our plans, currently establishing a list of opportunities identified to quickly and effectively improve perceptions around parking. We are very optimistic that the recent move to include parking enforcement as a city function should help facilitate these improvements. Parking continues to be a major challenge for our downtown and downtowns across North America. Looking forward, some of the projects we are currently working on include an increased merchant and business promotions program, enhancing the walkability with some improvements to E&N trail connectivity, a new event sponsorship strategy looking to encourage some outside sources of income to promote events, participation in tourism's Pride of Place campaign, increase in downtown Nanaimo wayfinding tactics, and participation in Diana Krall Plaza upgrades. Over the last 2 months, we've been researching the opinions and attitudes of the public and our members and partners to determine our strengths and weaknesses in order to create a plan for the future of downtown. The most important voice in this, our membership, is being heard, and this group will be featured prominently in a public meeting to identify priorities for the strategic plan. This meeting will be open to the public, and we look forward to council attending and participating. The future looks bright in downtown Nanaimo. Councillor McKay's comments concluding our last presentation to Council surrounding wants and needs with respect to taxpayer accountability is an important consideration, and I welcome this inquisition. The DNBA is providing Nanaimo taxpayers with an exceptional return of investment. Over half of our $400,000 budget comes from the downtown business and property owners themselves. The balance is provided from the city. Within the budget, the DNBA has attracted over $200,000 in grant money that was spent on the revitalization and economic improvements of downtown Nanaimo. In addition, through our various committees, we have been able to attract highly educated and experienced community members to volunteer large amounts of their time and expertise towards the good of the community, adding up to thousands of dollars worth of intellectual capital being donated to the city. This level of community engagement is only achieved through a volunteer-based organization like the DNBIA. Our dedicated and hardworking staff allow us to organize and maintain the continuity and momentum of the volunteers, and most importantly, our staff are carrying out the execution and implementation of the strategies, tactics, and objectives as defined by our members, board of directors, and committee volunteers. If we took the same $200,000 city grant administered by the city and directed it towards downtown revitalization efforts, you can be assured that the effectiveness of that money on revitalization efforts would be severely restricted. Equivalently, if you eliminated the matching grant and relied solely on the tax levy, the lack of available staff resources increases the reluctance of our high-value volunteers from participating, as they do not have the available resources to be optimally effective. There is no better return on investment with respect to revitalization efforts than through a well-managed and well-funded BIA. Continuing the momentum. The fact remains that well-funded and strategically directed BIAs are absolutely critical in the creation of thriving and attractive communities. Our committed volunteers, stakeholders, and community partners are poised and ready to maintain the positive direction of downtown Nanaimo. Our consultation with members and public at large will give us the direction needed to continue to build on the momentum we have created. We are ahead of the pack in recognizing the value of a well-funded BIA, and the discussion needs to shift from whether we need a BIA or not, to how we can best utilize this proven mechanism to make Nanaimo one of the most attractive communities in the world to live in, do business in, and most importantly, invest in. So thank you for your support. At this time, I would be all too happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Are there any questions of the delegation? Councillor McKay, I'm going to just acknowledge your hands. This is out of order. It's not worth.
Gone to sleep. A couple of questions, Your Worship. First one being, how long has this organization and the previous DNP been in existence? Is it 2000 or 2001? Can anybody recall? 2002?
So, Your Worship, there has been a BIA in place in various forms in downtown Nanaimo since the legislation was first adopted. I think it was the first one of the first ones in BC. It goes back to the 1980s, I think.
I guess what I'm getting at is publicly funded.
The matching funds from the general taxpayer started with the DNP, which I believe is in the last decade or so.
Thank you. So, Mr. Cooper, can you tell me, thank you for your presentation, by the way, can you tell me what is the benchmark or the target point where public funding is weaned off or discontinues in your mind? I mean, it seems to me that you're saying that this is something that must stay in perpetuity, but as you know, is there a target when we say that we've arrived?
I think that's has more to do with the wishes of the city's leadership. If we're looking to establish Nanaimo as a destination and compete amongst all the other alternatives for businesses and residents to locate in Western Canada, you need to recognize the importance of a thriving and healthy downtown. I think we all can agree that although the downtown's improved significantly over the last decade, that there's still a lot of work to do. I'm suggesting that we have a good head start and a good lead on a lot of our competitors. So if it's no longer a priority for the city, the direction of the city in establishing this Nanaimo as a destination, then perhaps they want to pull back on that funding. We would suggest that now is definitely not the time to do that, as the momentum that we've created is there. We've got one of the best groups of both committee members and board members that we've had in a long time. And this would be, in my opinion, poor timing for any reductions in that funding. It would simply allow all the other communities that we're competing against the perfect opportunity to catch up really quickly. Because I can tell you they're all working towards either establishing this level of funding that we have or already have it.
Cool.
Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Could you explain the rationale behind the city receiving an administrative fee of $5,600, but not until 2014? Is that a one-shot thing, or what do you intend by that?
You have to run that question by me again. I'm not sure I followed it.
Acting Chair, if I may interrupt.
Yes.
The administration fee is a fee that the city charges the BIA for the setup of the process in establishing the BIA. It's deducted in the first year that the BIA funds are collected. So this bylaw is effective for 2014, so the fee would be deducted in the first year of the BIA bylaw, which is 2014.
Okay. Next question to Mr. Cooper then is, or maybe Mr. Howard, when you talk about raising the maximum tax from 5,000 to 6,000 in 2014. You're doing that to offset the smaller businesses, to help them, and yet you only have, if I read this correctly, 3 properties in BIA 1 that are affected by that. How much of an impact would that have on the smaller businesses that you are trying to help?
My understanding is that 80% of our members are going to see their fees cut in half. The remainder are going to see an adjustment in their fees.
Madam Chair, Mr. Howitt can provide further response.
The raising the ceiling to 6,000, what we identified in the report was that there was 3 that reached the 6,000, but there is, and I don't have the numbers in front of you, but there is substantially more properties that are now in the 5,000 to 6,000 range that would have previously been at the previous ceiling of 5,000.
Okay. And final follow-up, if I may, and that would be to staff. Can somebody explain in really plain language the difference between petitioning against and petitioning in favor, so that all of us can understand it, and why it is that you prefer one over the other, please?
The petition against process is typically used where it's a council initiative. In other words, council has a desire to either carry out a service or continue a service. Where a petition for is typically done by a local area service that is asking council to carry out a service in their area. So in a BIA, and for instance, if presumably if the BIA was coming to council for the first time, or the DNBIA, for instance, saying to council, we would like to establish a BIA in the downtown, then you would use a petition for. But in this particular case, our logic recommending that it be a petition against is that the BIAs have been in place for 25 years, and they've been established and they're providing a good service to the city. So we had presumed that it's a service that council would want to continue.
Did we 4 or 5 years ago do a petition against?
Every petition at the city of Nanaimo for a BIA has been a petition against.
Okay. And would you recall the percentage by which that came in last time?
It was very close. I don't have the exact percentage. The BIA 1 was very close. BIA 2 was a fairly strong vote, or I should say a very weak vote against the establishment of a BIA for BIA 2. But the BIA 1, it was much closer.
I just want to add a comment to that, and that is that since that close vote, and that's one of the reasons why the DNBIA has modified the mechanism on which they want to allocate their charges, was to address some of the concerns. You'll recall there was concerns on some of the outlying areas about people paying more than they thought was their fair share, and this restructuring of the fees is intended to try and address a lot of those complaints. So we think that by taking this step, the DNBIA has addressed a significant number of the complaints, and we're hopeful that there'll be more widespread support.
Okay, thank you both.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Cooper, for your presentation. I have a couple of questions, may be directed to staff as well. Mr. Cooper, you talked about being in Kamloops. Can you identify how many BIAs in the province are funded in part or whole by the city, the taxpayers?
Sure, I don't have that information. I'd be happy to get that information to you.
Thank you. Question to staff. To conduct this alternate approval process, what is the cost associated to do this process?
Acting Chair, I don't have the exact cost. The administration fee that is in the bylaw, the $5,600, I believe it is, was a calculation that was done by our finance department to determine the costs of staff time and resources to conduct the service. So I'd have to presume that it's $5,600.
Thank you. A further question, if I may, Acting Chair. And you spoke to silos and operating in silos, and it's better if the synergistic approach to work together and all of those things. So when we speak to the DNBIA, which interfaces with the city and the Nanaimo Hotel Association and Tourism Nanaimo and the NEDC. So the NEDC, to which we fund approximately $1.5 plus or minus $1 million, and with that, does that encompass, the question to staff, the destination development marketing dollars? Is that contained within the NEDC operating budget?
Acting Chair, the funds that go to the NEDC are representative of the previous city's Economic Development Department budget and the city's Destination Development budget. So it is the roughly $1.25 million.
Thank you. And my final question, Acting Chair. On an annual basis, I trust that we receive and review the business plan and the annual operating budget. And if there's any surpluses to those budgets, what happens to carryovers or surpluses?
Acting Chairs, on the NEDC, the funds that they do not spend go into their own reserve for future projects. With the DNBA, I don't believe there's ever been any substantial surplus left over. But if it is, it's just carried forward into the next year and used for things like the Portland Loo and things of that nature.
Thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I don't have a question for the delegation, I was just wondering if any other council members did it, because if not, I'd move to receive them. Okay.
Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. Excellent report. You seem to be working hard. Will we have the results of the trench study for council available? Will you be making a presentation to us on that?
Yes, we did finally hear back from the Ministry of Environment answering some of our questions and concerns before we move forward with our ownership group meeting. We're actually meeting tomorrow morning to discuss the details of the meeting that we're going to be hosting with the property owners in the terminal corridor. I believe there's been a date set. Memory's not serving me well. I think it's the first week of May or something of that. But we're meeting tomorrow to hash out the details where the results of that report will be presented to the property owners.
And to council too, will eventually see some of it?
Yes, we believe the next step of that project is for the DNBA to take a facilitative role and work with the properties owners down there to take that to the next step under the guidance of the Ministry of Environment.
As well, Your Worship, our Acting Chair Johnstone, city staff will plan to attend the owners group because the city is an owner, and we'll be intending to represent council at that, and we'll bring forward any information from there.
The grocery comment with your dad, there's a lot of people eating at our groceries now. I think they're getting lighter as they get home.
For sure.
It's in 2,600 parking spots, you say, in downtown core. That's just the public spots, not including the private spots in the community, because I thought there's about, with the malls and everything, there's some 5,000 parking spots in there.
Yeah, I believe that number is going to be consistent with those that are city-owned and operated.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Just a quick question from myself. Since the BIA was last adopted, how many new businesses have you managed to attract to the downtown core?
Sure. I wish I could give you that information off the top of my head. I can't, but I would be happy to get you that information in a relatively short manner.
There are far fewer empty storefronts in the downtown core, as I witnessed.
Yes, that's a good observation. Thank you for that comment.
And congratulations to all of your wonderful volunteers in that support your initiatives.
Thank you, Councillor.
One last question.
Sure.
With the NEDC and DNBIA, do you see any mutual benefit of joining together and working economies of scale, bringing people in, keeping them here, helping? Part of ECDEV's group is to grow the businesses that are here, and you're one of the downtown core groups of organization. Is there, I know you're partners, but I'm talking a real meld. Is there any thought of anything like that?
I think the perspective of the NEDC is a little more macro in nature in their approach to economic development within the city, and I think the DNBIA is able to really look at the economic development at a micro level specific to the downtown. So, for example, most recently in a business improvement and retention program, where they're going and identifying businesses that are on the verge of success or maybe struggling to take their business to the next level, and they're identifying businesses all over our city. They brought us on board, so we helped them identify some specific downtown businesses that we thought should be part of that survey. And then more importantly, our staff and volunteers actually go and conduct the interviews on behalf of the NEDC and then filter that information back to the NEDC. So it allows us to garner some really front lines information about some of the struggles of our members and then bring that to the larger organization, the NEDC, who can interpret that data and apply it at a more macro level.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, staff's recommendation is to direct staff. Oh, is there?
Move to receive.
Move to receive. Seconded?
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries.
And I move to direct staff to proceed with notice the intention to conduct a and direct
Secondary? Councillor Bestwick? All in favor?
Oh, sorry. Did someone second it? I did.
I'm sorry,
Sorry.
it's not working. So it's...
Thank you.
Okay, it's been seconded.
Thank you. My position on this is I'm not in support of petition against processes. As Councillor Patchy raised earlier, it's a confusing process. It's one that confuses more than it simplifies. And I think that it's, even for those people that have undertaken the processes on multiple times or multiple basis, it creates a considerable amount of criticism throughout, and it's something that, as a former chair and member of the BIA, and as well listening to many of the business owners in the downtown that have concerns and have had concerns about it, I won't be able to support the alternate approval process as presented to us in the staff's recommendation.
Call the question. All in favor of the staff recommendation? Opposed? I see Councillor McCabe, Bestwick, and Kemp opposed. The motion carries. Thank you.
The Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Area Bylaw number 1, BIA 1, 2013, number 7168, pass first reading.
Acting Chair, there was two motions. Did we do both?
Yes, it was both.
Thank you.
Seconded? Second. Councillor Patchy. All in favor?
Opposed.
Opposed? Same opposed. Thank you.
I move that Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Area Bylaw number 1, BIA 1, 2013, number 7168, pass second reading.
All in favor? Seconded by Councillor Patchy. All in favor? Opposed?
That Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Area Bylaw number 1, BIA 1, 2013, number 7168, pass third reading.
Seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. And now to the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Area Bylaw number 2, BIA 2.
That Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Area Bylaw number 2, BIA 2, 2013, number 7169, pass first reading.
Seconded. Councillor Patchy. All in favor? Opposed? Councillors McKay, Bestwick, and Kipp.
That Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Area Bylaw number 2, BIA 2, 2013, number 7169, pass second reading.
Seconded. Councillor Patchy. All in favor? Opposed?
And that Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Area Bylaw number 2, BIA 2, 2013, number 7169, pass third reading.
Seconded. Councillor Patchy. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. The motion's carried.
Call the mayor back.
You may, the IT people, you may want to come and look at this. There we go. Oh, it's okay. It's back on. Thank you. It's back on. They just fixed it.
Fixed it?
It was broken.
I only left you 2 minutes and you broke it. 11A, thanks. Okay, bylaws with no accompanying report. 11A, motion that zoning amendment bylaw 2013 number 4500.035 RA 305 to rezone the property at 433 Milton Street from Old City Low Density Fourplex Residential R1R to Comprehensive Development District Zone 10 CD10 in order to allow for a two-lot subdivision be adopted.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. B, motion that zoning amendment bylaw 2013 number 4500.036 general text and mapping amendments be adopted. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Overleaf, motion that parcel tax roll preparation bylaw 2013 number 7164 to provide for the preparation of the parcel tax rule be adopted. Moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, motion that the Regional Parks and Trails parcel tax bylaw 2013 number 7165 to impose a Regional Parks and Trails parcel tax be adopted.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And going to the bylaw status correspondence, none related to the report, and move down to other business. 15A, at the regular meeting of council held 2013 April 8, Councillor Bestwick advised that he would be bringing forward the following motion for consideration at the 2013 April 22nd regular meeting of council, and his motion was that council directs staff to schedule all future special in-camera meetings to begin at 5 or 5:30 on regular council meeting nights in the City of Nanaimo Service and Resource Centre, first floor, 411 Dunsmuir Street, Nanaimo, BC. Councillor Bestwick, you want to comment? No?
Thank you. Given that I trust that all in-camera meetings are special, that the reference to special in-camera meetings encompasses all in-camera meetings on Mondays on our regular council meeting night. So, for example, today we had an in-camera meeting, which was regularly scheduled. I'm sure for those in attendance it was special, but it wasn't a special in-camera meeting. It's just simply an in-camera meeting that we would normally conduct at 1 o'clock on Mondays, to be redesignated to 5 p.m. or 5:30, depending on the scope of the agenda. That is the intent.
Okay, and that's your motion. Was there a seconder on that to discuss it? It was seconded. Discussion on it. Councillor Greaves, did you have your on?
Yes, thank you, Worship. I have no problem with this, although today, as you know, we spent 3 hours in our in-camera meeting, and we didn't, I don't know how many went through the agenda after that. No. So I don't know 3 hours of that. So if we start at 5 o'clock, that would lead us to 8 o'clock. If that was the case, I guess that would mean that we would have to shorten what was on the agenda for the in-camera minutes. But that makes for a long day, 5 o'clock to 11 o'clock at night, probably. I don't know what time we're going to go to tonight. I'm going to vote in favor, but you know, your brain can only handle as much as your rear ends can handle, so we'll see what happens.
Well phrased. Councillor Brennan.
I have the same concerns as Councillor Greaves, and I would wonder if Councillor Bestwick would consider a 4:30 start.
Is that a question?
It is a question.
Well, just if I may address the previous two comments, seldom do we spend 3 hours in camera meetings, and there is the possibility to adjourn and then reconvene following the council meeting itself. So that possibility does exist to us, and I do recall in previous terms having to do that. Whether we do it in the middle of the day or, I trust at the end of the day, I agree there's only so much that we can absorb and cope and do what we're tasked to do. Would I accept 4:30 if our agenda warrants it based on the amount or scope of items? Yes. What I'm trying to do is allow those that are still in full-on working mode the opportunity to have that day available to them to do such, and then tasked to do their council duties and outside of normal working hours.
Go ahead.
I hope that answers your question.
It does answer my question. So I'd propose an amendment then so that it reads that council meetings to be special in-camera council meetings to begin between 4:30 and 5:30. That then gives staff opportunity to make some estimate about how much time it'll take. So I move that amendment unless...
Okay, I just might suggest one change is that when you have variable start times, that leads to confusion. I'm worried that some might start at 4:30 and understand it was at 4:30 and some at 5. And
Okay, then I would move that they begin at 4:30, and that...
Sorry, I wasn't trying to make it difficult, but anyway.
Move an amendment to begin at 4:30 in order to accommodate the business, and also in order to accommodate the time factor, because this talks about meeting at the resource center, so that entails us having to come here afterwards. So it's just time. 4:30 seems a reasonable time to me.
Thank you. Your Worship, may I speak to that as well?
Sure. Is that a friendly amendment that you're acceptable to?
Yes.
Okay.
I also believe, Your Worship, that we receive our in-camera, like all our agendas, late on Thursday, late afternoon, or early in the evening Thursdays, or in some cases Fridays, and then by 1 o'clock today or prior to, if we have any concerns or issues that need to be addressed as it relates to in-camera, or we have, frankly, a full extra working business day in order to accommodate those questions, or seeking advice, or seeking legal opinions, or otherwise, which sometimes aren't always available to us, without fully coping with the agenda on Fridays. So oftentimes it's hard to get to people on Fridays when you first open your agenda package up on Thursday evening. So I think it will also help us all, staff included, to be able to undertake a better communication process as it relates to agenda items on our in-camera.
Okay, so Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Worship. I will be voting in favor of the motion. I believe that we'll be mandated to get through our business a bit quicker. Sometimes I think we carry on our meetings a little too long and there's a little bit too much verbosity. So I really think it would be the best. We did this in the beginning when I was first on council, and it worked very well. So I look forward to starting at 4:30.
Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Well, we're talking about a special in-camera meeting on a regular council night. So we're going to end up in this building. Why don't we have the in-camera, let me finish please, why don't we have the in-camera in here in this building as well? That's number one. Number two is, what do we do for dinner? I remember not so long ago we saved thousands of dollars in sandwiches by getting away from the time that you now want to go back to, and so I'm somewhat dumbfounded, really. I'll be willing to accommodate anybody, and if it really suits Councillor Bestwick better than anything else, then obviously I will help him out and vote in favor of it. But some of the logic escapes me, frankly. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Anderson, did you have something to say? No. Okay. From a staff standpoint, is there any issues that you can suggest at this point before we vote?
Not really, Your Worship. The only one challenge might be for the staff. Staff usually get here by 6 or so. So the staff would be the same staff that would be the support staff that are at the in-camera would probably have to leave before 6 to get down here. No, 6:30. 6:30. We have to leave by 6:15, get down here by 6:30, as long as council understands that.
Okay, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Richard. To Councillor Patchy's comment, certainly I can't or won't apologize for still being in the workforce. When I first came on council, the time of the in-camera meetings were at 5 p.m. And since then, on 2 terms, my 3rd term, we have amended the start time to 1 p.m. for other accommodative reasons. I'll pack a lunch. I don't need a meal. I'll bring my own. So from that perspective, the time was set up originally for a reason, and I think that it was largely because of people's schedules, and that it made more practical sense to do it at that time. So just returning to what was and was for years and many terms the hour of the in-camera, which was, as Councillor Brennan said, 5 o'clock.
Okay, the motion on the floor now, maybe, do you want to read it, Mr. Howard, so everyone understands? It's 4:30, obviously.
Your Worship, the motion is that Council directs staff to schedule all future special in-camera meetings to begin at 4:30 p.m. on regular council meeting nights in the City of Nanaimo Service and Resource Centre, first floor, 411 Dunsmuir Street, Nanaimo, BC.
Okay, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to be clear that even though it says special in-camera, that it includes all in-camera meetings. That's correct. Thank you.
Okay, and that was your intent too? Yes. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So
Your Worship?
Yes.
I would make a motion that a light supper be provided on the days that we meet at 4:30. And I'll explain to you why. Because quite frankly, I think that the three councillors tonight who proposed all of the $2.2 million in cuts would agree that providing a light supper for council when we have to work through the supper hour is not an onerous amount of money. I think it's a reasonable expectation that if I come at 4:30 for a meeting and I expect to stay here until, well, probably 9:30 tonight, that it's not unreasonable for me to expect that I would have a light meal. And I think I've seen us work before, and we work long hours, and we don't have any snacks provided. We don't make the best decisions, like anybody. We make better decisions when we're more comfortable. And so that's why I'm making that motion. And I don't think that it's fair to ask us to pack a lunch. And actually, I've heard that before at this table, and then I've never seen anybody bring any bag lunch.
Okay. So
Was there a second?
yeah, but you don't share them. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. So on the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? We have Councillor Bestwick, Councillor McKay opposed. Balance of council in favor. The motion to have snacks passes.
Oh, no, a light supper.
Repass, sorry.
Supper.
Okay.
Not a snack.
The next one is that at the regular meeting of council held 2013 April 8th, Councillor Kipp advised that he would be bringing forward the following motion for consideration at the 2013 April 22nd regular meeting of council, and his suggested motion was that council consider forming a protective services or public safety committee.
Your Worship, I would like to move that to our governance review, to send it to them to be put into. We're looking at our committees and things now. I think it's probably important that we add it to that process. Okay. So I would like to send that forward, the recommendation to look at a protective services or public safety committee under our governance review.
Okay. Is a motion required of this? Because it was actually Councillor Kipp who brought it forward, and I think he could make that referral, but Mr. Kenny.
Well, I think that the council members will probably raise it in their meetings with the governance review consultants, but for clarity and certainty, I'd recommend the motion.
Okay. So moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Discussion? Are you going to discuss it?
Yes, just briefly, I'd like to ask the mover of the motion how this differs from Safer Nanaimo.
Well, Protective Services Committee typically is examples of the Cowichan Valley or other local governments where it's a committee there's political oversight in police, fire, bylaw services, emergency management, and it works on those specific issues for the greater community. Mm-hmm. It's Safer, I think, it's probably a great direction for it to head, from Safer to encompass the whole community and work as a broad, which Safer is working that way anyhow. But I think I'm concerned with the name Safer Nanaimo. It sounds like it's unsafe, but I like the terms protective services or public safety better.
Was that the last motion supported, or where are we at now?
I'm voted.
Okay, so let's have another go at this thing. So all those in favor of basically it's a motion to refer, which in any event. Okay.
Your Worship?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering whether consideration of $550,000 in cuts to service would be referred to a committee such as that, so that the service providers would have input into consideration of cuts.
Okay, was that a motion or was that a
No, I'm
question?
asking the question whether that would be the vision of Protective Services Committee, whether they would be asked to consider the reduction of $550,000 in the services that they provide.
Okay, Councillor Kipp.
Well, I guess if we send every committee, of course, the people within the operations of the community set the budget. They take all of their cost centers and put them into their departmental budget, so they're creating the budget. So obviously we would send it back to say, we recommend this cut in your department, but if you can come up with something else. So I think that would be a departmental thing, but we do send the budgets back to our committees. I believe Parks and Rec looks at their budget completely with all their departments and balances out. So committees do review budgets.
Okay, so we're moving into Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Bishop. I think, just to follow up, if I may respond as well to the question, that when those same departments or wish to ask for more money, it's discussed at that level and comes to us for a request for more or status quo. And I think that it would be very worthwhile for that committee or any committees to make a presentation that may include a reduction, or that may include a restructuring, or may include a provision to add this but remove that so that it remains status quo. So I would suggest that it would be appropriate, just as it would to ask for more. No, it's appropriate.
Okay. So now we move into 15C, and I just want to make a comment at this point there that this was something that Councillor Anderson was going to request a reconsideration of motion 16013, but I was going to suggest instead that basically in the spirit of efficiency, and rather than enter into these multiple levels of procedural motions, I think we should get right to the heart of the matter, which was Councillor Anderson's request to reconsider the matter that was before us on April 8, 2013, and that was dealing with the Fire Rescue Department business model. And so I'm going to use my powers under Section 131, of the Community Charter, and require Council to reconsider the matter. And the following recommendations were for Council's consideration: that Council 1, receive the report, and 2, direct staff to consult with stakeholders, and 3, present the completed business model documentation at a subsequent Council meeting. And you know, I just would like to make a comment at this time, and there's a guy, the IAFF are here as well in membership. You know, in bringing this back, this is not to do anything more than maybe bring light on it and give the public the opportunity to hear this. The fire budget is into the millions of dollars. It was discussed tonight. I believe it's in the neighborhood of 12 million or so. And we're just simply receiving the report. We're going to ask staff to consult with the stakeholders, and then we're going to, at that point, present a completed business model documentation at a subsequent council meeting. And I don't, for 1 minute, feel on my part that bringing this thing back is any kind of a tacit approval in principle of this. I want to be objective and open and transparent, and I think it's important that we have the opportunity to discuss, receive the report, and consult with the stakeholders. I mean, the taxpayers of Nanaimo pay all these expenses, and I think they have every right to hear this and have input into it. So having said that, I'll simply ask, what's Council's wish?
I have a comment.
Okay. Yeah. Well, okay, on a procedure.
Under this mayor's prerogative, does this require a seconder and or a vote, or is just simply the mayor's privilege?
Your Worship, this is a privilege that the mayor has under Section 131 of the Community Charter to reconsider any matter that has previously been before council that has not been reconsidered.
So that said, we don't need to vote on this?
No. The matter of reconsideration does not need to be voted on, but the matter that has been brought back by the mayor has been brought back for reconsideration by council.
There I go.
Okay, Councillor Anderson, you're on now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move the recommendation from before, and I'd like to speak to it, so direct staff to consult with the stakeholders. And actually, I prefer to do
well, if you want to move it, and then let's get a second. Is there a seconder for that then?
Then you get a second. Yes. So, thank you, Mr. Chair, for bringing this back. As you know, I was sick during the last dialogue at council, which is why I wanted to have an opportunity to also add my input to this as well. For me, receiving this report doesn't mean we necessarily endorse the plan. It means that it's one step that we take to allow further collaboration with the stakeholders. And for me, I think it would be a disservice to not go and actually find out what the stakeholders actually have to say. So whether it be speaking with the medical providers, the firefighters, the paid on calls, all of those individuals. As we saw the presentation from the consultant last time, which I watched from home, there are causes for concern within what's happening within that department. And I thank Councillor Greaves for actually bringing the motion up so that we can look at all the departments that we have to see whether or not there's efficiencies to be found. And as it says within the report, the foundation of the new model is an evidence-based risk assessment model. And all I'm saying is it doesn't mean that at the end of the day that we will actually endorse this report. That a new business model. It means that we'll send it out to the firefighters, to the people who are actually involved, the stakeholders, and then have it come back to council and be able to actually have a dialogue as to whether or not this is the correct direction to be going down. But as I said, I feel it would be a disservice, one, to the stakeholders and to the community who has to pay this bill at the end of the day. So that is why I wanted to bring this up, and I thank you for allowing this conversation to continue on. So as I said, I'm fully in support of the first one, which is to direct staff to consult with the stakeholders and hopefully come back to council at a later date and have this conversation. I also had an opportunity last week to consult with someone who was involved with the fire service, and they raised concerns for me as well. So I do have concerns, and I would like to hope that council is part of the stakeholders as well as we had our own individual consultations as well. So I just wanted to say that I think we should move forward. It's one step just to receive the report and move forward, have dialogue with the individuals who are involved in this, and then we'll see whether or not we should accept it. But the previous motion, which said take council's comments at that last meeting and then bring a new report to me, I would like to know what our fire chief would actually take from the comments, because I heard a lot of political rhetoric, and if the only thing I think that he might be able to take it is that some council members don't like Margaret Thatcher. So, but anyways, I hope we can continue on and move forward.
Okay, Councillor Brennan.
The motions that were before us last council meeting, there were 3. There weren't just 2. There was 1, receive the report, 2, direct staff to consult with stakeholders, and then present the completed model. Am I wrong on that? Because certainly what I was addressing was the motion to receive, which made the 2 other motions.
Yeah, that was the recommendation from last meeting, Your Worship.
So this meeting, you're not asking us to receive the report?
What Mr. Howitt is saying is that through the mayor's actions, the mayor has put the motions back in front of you. I don't know why Councillor Anderson jumped to the second motion and didn't make the motion to receive. That's his prerogative. And
I don't see it on. I'm looking at the amended agenda, but if so, I would also move that we receive it as well.
The reason I asked that question is because receiving the report, I think, sets a particular direction. It accepts a particular direction, which is a radical departure from the previous plan. And that's the issue that I think needs to be reviewed, because there is one option presented in this report, and really there should be more than one option presented if you want to take it out and consult with people. You need to canvass the alternatives. One of the alternatives is the current system, and that's not in there. And this simply, in my view anyway, jumps to the conclusion that the current system is not working and that an alternate system has to be found. And that's why I didn't want to receive the report, because I want our staff to start at ground zero and begin the consultation with the stakeholders without having a preconceived plan. To talk to our stakeholders to see what they see as the future of the fire service, and then write the plan. It's not a radical idea. At the end of last week's meeting, we set up an advisory council to come back and recommend a neighborhood plan for us for the Wilcox area. So we did that. The initial consultation begins with all the stakeholders, and out of that consultation you derive a plan that you then take out and you ask for stakeholders and the community's input. That first piece was missing for me, and that's why I asked that we not receive it, that we send them back to start at the beginning, and that the beginning of the process is an honest consultation with the people who provide the service, that would be the first step. That's why I didn't want to receive the report. Had nothing to do with any other remarks that I found fairly gratuitous, perhaps condescending. But in any case, that's why, and I still hold that belief.
Okay, just maybe I'll get staff's comment on it. I think that our agenda is wrong. I think that it should reflect points 1, 2, and 3, and on that item 15C, because it's my recollection as well that point 1 was to receive the report, and that was right into it, and that was dropped out of it, and it should not have been, and I think it's an oversight.
Yeah, the only reason it was, Your Worship, is this was printed up when it was going to be brought back by Councillor Anderson, and that's brought back in the first part, and now that you're bringing it back, I agree it should have 1, 2, and 3, but the reason it wasn't is because it was written with a different mover.
If I may just interrupt, my intention was to move by the 1, receive, second, direct consultation, then present the business model. So I was going by what was written here. So how do we move forward since this first, or should we just...
Okay, we've got let's not debate a little, we've got several speakers here too, but we should get clarification on where we're at.
Your Worship, if I could clarify, the matter has been brought back. So at this time, council can entertain any motion they wish. We've provided erroneously just the last 2, but the original matter included 3 recommendations from staff. To receive the report first. But it doesn't mean that council can entertain any motion they wish, including any one of the 3, or 2 of the 3, or all 3.
Okay. We've got, and the motion that you have before you, Mr. Howard, is what? There was a motion and it was seconded. Is that not correct?
Yes, and the first motion that I made, so I guess we may just have to do this out of order.
Your Worship, my understanding was that Councillor Anderson made the motion that's on your green sheet, which is the direct staff to consult with the stakeholders and present the completed business model documentation at a subsequent council meeting.
Well, if I may amend it to also include receive the report. The seconder, if there is.
Okay, you're reflecting that in it?
That includes the attached synopsis for information. That was the motion the other day.
Right. I'm just waiting for staff to come back and nod or shake.
So, Your Worship, in our view, Councillor Anderson has made the motion, and I believe Councillor Paggi seconded it, which is to receive the report, to direct staff to consult with stakeholders, and present the completed business model documentation at a subsequent council meeting. That's what I believe has been moved and seconded.
Mover and seconder are in agreement. Okay, sorry? And then Councillor, we've got several speakers now. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. Precisely what Councillor Anderson is advocating for by bringing this back is exactly what we voted on and on April the 8th, and is precisely what we voted on to do then, and it is the exact same thing today. Receive the report, direct staff to consult with the stakeholders, and bring back an updated business model plan upon completion of same. It's exactly what we did on April the 8th, and it's exactly what the mayor wished to do with his privilege, and it's exactly what we're voting on right now that we did on April the 8th. Same thing.
Okay. Councillor Anderson, are you on again?
Yeah, I would actually like some clarification, because I watched the council meeting and that is not what I saw. It was that take it back to staff, have them consider the comments made by council, and then bring it back. It did not include receiving the report, nor did it talk about actually consulting with the stakeholders. So before I ask my question, I'd just like some clarification from staff regarding what the actual motion was that evening.
Your Worship, if I may read the motion, it was moved and seconded that council defer consideration of the Nanaimo Fire Rescue Department business model and synopsis until staff conduct a further review, taking into consideration comments made by council at the regular council meeting held April 8, 2013. Motion carried. Those comments, taking into consideration those comments, were take it back to the stakeholders, have conversations with the stakeholders, review the business model, come back with a new synopsis of that business model at a later date. That is precisely what we did with motion number 16103. April 8th.
I believe that's all correct, but the motions on the floor right now are 1, 2, and 3. Receive the report, direct staff to consult with stakeholders, and present the completed business model documentation in a subsequent council meeting.
I'll second that if it hasn't.
No, it's been moved and seconded already. Okay, and that's your understanding of the motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to make a couple of comments. It was said that it's a radical departure from the 2005 plan, and I wasn't on council at that time, and only some members of council were on at that time. This is a new council, and perhaps there are new priorities, but there was a report that was asked for by council to look at our fire plan and have it updated. So as I know Councillor Brennan has said numerous times that we have a highly professional staff, that they have worked on what council has directed, and they'll go and consult with the stakeholders and come back, and after that point in time we can make a decision.
Okay. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Worship. Well, in fact, I asked for an update to update the standard of response coverage study, so that's the 2005 study, to reflect current conditions and to best meet, and here's the rub, the standard of the first engine on scene within 6 minutes, 90% of the time. That's what I asked for. In other words, how can we improve our response time? That's all I asked for. And instead of getting that, I got an engine responding with 2 firefighters. Our problem is that in 2004 or 2005, I'm not quite sure of the year, that council accepted the standards that were presented to them, and the standards were not very good at all. And the standard here is an engine within 6 minutes. It doesn't say 4 people or 4 firefighters, and in fact, now we're talking about 2 firefighters, and next year might be 1. And don't scoff at that, because we've gone from 4, we're working towards 4, and we don't get 4 all the time, but we're working towards 4. and sometimes we end up with 3. Now we're back to 2, which was what we were in 1982, or 3.
Okay, but Councillor Graves,
and you can cut me off at any time because I'm as passionate about this as I am about the low-barrier housing.
And good on you. But anyway, I was going to say, really what we need to do, there's a motion on the floor, and it's been moved and seconded, and now we're discussing really the motion on the floor. And so what you're discussing about response times and so on, if it forms part of either 1, 2, or 3, proceed. If it doesn't, don't proceed, I guess.
And what does 1 say?
1 is to receive the report.
And I don't want to receive the report for the following reasons.
Okay.
For the previous
I see.
Reasons. One of them was the one I just mentioned.
Well recovered. Okay.
I've got a whole bunch.
Okay.
You just, when you get tired, I'm going to filibuster, but when you get tired of me.
Can I ask a question?
But it has to be related to the motion, though. It really does.
Can I ask a question?
Not distantly, directly.
Sure.
Question?
As stated in the report, it says engine. Under type and kind for resourcing, does an engine have a specific, like, you don't get a police car, you get a cop with the police car. You don't get an ambulance, you get an ambulance with 2 guys. So is there a type and kind that says a fire engine is a 4-man complement? Or is it just, because it's just a piece of equipment without the men?
But let me just ask, maybe Mr. Kenny.
Well, no, what I'm saying is his motion.
But wait a minute. The motion deals with number 1, receive the report. That's one we can decide on. Number 2, direct staff to consult with the stakeholders. We're not talking about equipment at this point. And 3, present the completed business model documentation at a subsequent council meeting. So really, those are the 3 issues. Mr. Kenny, am I sort of broaching this in a fair way? Or are we? I'm just trying to keep this on course here because I suspect that we might be diverting deliberately or unintentionally off the subject.
Well, those are certainly the 3 motions, and you're within your power as the chair to approve what you consider to be in order.
And what's not.
I'll try.
Oh, please. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Greaves. Councillor Patchy.
I'm not finished.
He's not done.
Oh, okay. Have a go. But remember, it's dealing with 1, 2, and 3. I'm really interested in hearing this now.
Remember what you said about your head and your butt.
Yeah. Well, a lot of this plan, and by the way, I have to disagree with Councillor Anderson. Not much of this is new. This report is not new. The only thing new about this report is that 2-man engines and capping the number of firefighters at 100. That's the only thing that I would consider new about this report. So it doesn't fit what I asked for. I think we're doing an awful good job for $12 million. We've got 80 career firefighters on boots on the ground. We've got 75 paid on call. We've got 17 staff. That's 172 firefighters or staff. 4 stations, a multitude of vehicles for $12 million. And our property tax is 2.9, and without the asset management and without the that other 1%, I can't remember what it is, we're ending up with 0.9% for property taxes. I think we should shelve this thing, put it on a shelf, and get back to 2005, that report. Get on with business as usual. Quit thinking outside the box. Outside the box is actually a career fire department. That's outside the box. Ever since 1975, we've had a combination fire department, and I think we need a career fire department. Okay. So anyway, that's my rant.
We're drawing we're drawing a line right now. Okay. Councillor Patchy, you're on.
Oh my. I don't quite know where to start other than to disagree in a respectful way with Councillor Brennan that the acceptance of a report constitutes us going into a certain direction. I just do not find it within myself to be able to think that way. So that is my number 1 problem. There are things in this report that I have try to spend some time with and try to understand that are absolutely anathema to the way I feel about firefighters and what their performance should be and what they can do and what they can't do. Two-man engines is something so strange to me that I have trouble accepting. So there are lots of things in this report that I will have to get over one way, shape, or the other. But that's not to say that we cannot have a discussion, that we cannot have the stakeholders involved and express in a clear way to us what it is that is the big objection and that's not working for them, and whether that's 100 firefighters or 140, whether that's opening a fire station on Hammond Bay or somewhere else, that is two-man engines, that is the 64% that is spent on medical stuff. I need answers from that, and I want it in the most succinct way that I can get it. If this report came to us now and I had to vote on it, I would certainly be voting against it. That's not the point. So receipt is the only thing that I'm looking at. So I have a question to staff. If I vote in favor of accepting, if I vote in favor of instructing you to deal with the stakeholders, would I necessarily have to vote on number 3?
Well, just to be clear, you're not voting on accepting. I don't think there's any words that have ever been used to say accept. So you're voting on to receive, which could be argued is moot. You're voting on directing staff to consult with stakeholders. And the third motion, which you're going to be voting on as well, is presenting the completed business model documentation. I don't know why we would have further discussion if you didn't want us to present the final business model. So I think they go hand in hand.
I'm saying that, well, in my mind, not necessarily, because maybe that's not the kind of direction that I want to go either. And so why would I look forward to a report that Councillor Brennan and Councillor Greaves, for instance, say is so objectionable to them that they don't even want to look at the result of, I may be looking for something different.
Yeah, go ahead.
Your Worship, through you to council as a whole, I guess one of the things I would suggest is that it's not just one model that we have in the report. Although it presents a new business model, there's certainly the traditional model, and we would definitely be consulting on both models. I think that's the important part that the community needs to be consulted on is, are you satisfied with the current model, or do you want a different model that has a different cost associated with it? So there's actually the two models that we would be presenting.
Well, again, I'll if I have to take the third one with it the way you describe it, then I will. I do want to have stakeholders involved. I want a conversation to start now. I don't want it to go back to you and then have to start the whole process over again. I just
But if I can, I think the third step is to bring back, if we're going to consult with the stakeholders, then we're going to have the completed business model, bring it back to subsequent council meeting and debate it here. So we'll make the final determination on it, and everyone will have their own input, whatever position they choose to take at that time. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. Receiving a report to me isn't meaning that I endorse it. It just means I want to move it forward. Collaboration is the big thing with me here. And the word collaboration in the Wikipedia one, the part of it I like is working with each other to do a task. It is recursive process where two or more people or organizations work together to realize shared goals. It is more than an intersection of common goals seen in cooperative ventures, but a deep collective determination to reach an identical objective. So for me, that was one of the things on the April 8th, I wanted to talk about the collaboration because it's like we have a model and now we're going out to the community with it and trying to get them to accept it. I wish we had got together and tore it apart from the beginning. Start with the old model on the table or the existing current policy and break that down. So I'm really interested in the collaboration stage of getting out there and talking with the firefighters, all of them, talking with other jurisdictions and talking with our community and council included. I hate that when we say it's consultation, we've already got kind of a model and we want to take it out to people and see if they like it or not. So I'd have preferred more collaboration at the beginning. But I support going forward and beating this thing up. I'm not certain I agree with all of the context of the plan that I've seen in the synopsis, but I'd like to hear the community's input.
Okay, Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, like the last time we discussed this, Your Worship, I had difficulty understanding why the word received meant that we were endorsing or adopting the plan as presented. There were components of the plan that I found quite interesting. The ambassadorial role of our firefighters, because to me and to the children of this community, our firefighters are heroes. And I wanted to be able to talk to the firefighters and discuss with them what they read into the report, what parts of the report they liked, or did they like any of it at all. I have been on the record of saying that I will always support four-man engines. I would never want to see my firefighters or our protective services endangered in any way in our community. They're the people we look up to, the people we respect. So I just want that dialogue with the firefighters and with the stakeholders of our community to see if there are parts of the plan that can be accepted and what could be changed, but not to support receive the entire report as written. I want some dialogue and some discussion.
Okay. Councillor Brennan. Is there any first-time speakers that want to speak before we go back to around the buoy? As opposed to buoy? Oh, I believe you've spoken before. The gentleman who just pushed the button here. Councillor Brennan.
I just want to remark on the idea that we want to move this forward. I want to move it forward. What we're moving forward is this report with this model. That's what that means. You're taking out the model and you're asking for input on the model. And true community development, as Councillor Kipp said, starts before that, before you devise and write up a model. That's the step that's missing, and I don't know how I can say that more clearly. That step is missing. And even in the language we use, move it forward. That's the report, the plan, the whatever. By the time you go out with that report and say, what do you want to do? You almost take the option of a different plan off the table. What you do is you present a plan to be tinkered with, to be agreed with this piece and maybe not with this piece. And we know this. We know this because we do it in every other endeavor. We did it with the strategic plan. We do it with neighborhood plans. We do it with every other plan we have but this one. But this one, we develop an idea and we take it out. We miss that step. I don't know why we would miss that step. And the other thing I don't understand is why we have such a preponderance of support for four-person engines, yet we move a report out into the community that suggests two-member engines. I don't get it. I don't understand it. The logic of it escapes me. So I can't support receiving this, because when we receive it, it means we take this particular report out to the community and say, what do you think? And it doesn't even include our desire to have four-person engines. So why we would do that, I don't know.
Okay, Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I will be brief.
Just a second. Okay.
You know, a lot of in the report, and Councillor Johnston mentioned ambassadorial role. This is in the report: public safety ambassadors, community engagement, educational programs. Nothing new. Nothing new. They can do that today. They don't need this report. They can do that today under this present plan with 4-man engines. One more, my final comment. Under this new model, the paid-on-call would be used effectively and to their maximum potential in their support capacity. Well, that was recommended in the 2005 10-year plan. What's taken so long? That should have been done 8 years ago. This is nothing new. Should be shelved.
Okay, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's interesting comments that have gone back and forth, and I think this would be one of those opportunities to be able to consult on not this plan, but and if I may just ask staff a question, I heard earlier you said that you would bring back the traditional model that's there as well. You would bring options for council to look at. Is that correct?
I think it's
yes, Your Worship, absolutely. There's other ways, of course, that council is aware that you can obtain a 4-person response, and I think part of the challenge here is to define what we mean by 4-man engines, 4-man responses. Paid-on calls is a topic, as Councillor Greaves talks about, that is largely unresolved and probably needs community input, because there's many ways that you can use the paid-on calls differently than we are now, and that may be something council wants to do in the future. So we would bring back the traditional model, which is as you know it, and this model and any other ways of achieving the 4-person response.
Thank you for that, and that's encouraging to me that it's not just the one model that would be looked at. It would be looking at what's currently there and giving us options. And one of the interesting things as well is that Nanaimo Fire Rescue shared motto is innovating with tradition. So moving forward, it is taking the traditional bases and looking to the future and saying, what can we do better? Or is this just the way that it should continue to be? But by allowing us to have conversations, we can try to be innovative and continue to have those traditions which are enshrined within the fire service. So for me, I think it's a good first step, and at the end we can actually have a conversation, because it's council who's going to be making this decision. And for us to move forward, we'll be able to see all of the options that are there and come to the best decision for our community.
Okay, Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. When it comes forward later on, we're going to be able to approve or reject what we see. There's been some consultation already. I know that I attended a meeting with the chief, with the consultant, with the assistant, with the deputy chief. I know there are members of our council that refused to accept those invitations, even to have an open mind, to even listen to something different. 2005, we talked about a traditional model. The traditional model is as we see it today, and moving forward, and what the plan looks like, etc. We see families that are trying to work with less every single day. We, as citizens and taxpayers, and and family heads of families, we also have to work with less every day. So I was quite intrigued by some of the innovative ideas that there were in this plan that said, look, you can stay with a traditional, you can stay with a professional fire force. This allows you to reorganize resources. You don't have to have the traditional model. You can integrate other items into the equation. Perhaps there's some medical issues you can fit in there as well, and look at a different model in a changing world. It's a very changing world out there. Let's at least explore it.
Okay, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. We've come a long way from you exerting your powers bestowed upon you as the mayor to take us to where I think we're headed. We spoke on April the 8th about the possibility and potential for a hybrid. We talked about this having a multitude of options that may be available to us to redefine things that are working as well as they're working, and maybe be able to help them work better. I've had many discussions with firefighters since 2005 about places and areas that they'd like to see improved. One of those is, of course, four-man engines going from 97.5% or whatever it is right now, or has been, to the 100%. I'm not comfortable with just taking out, in contextually or otherwise, just trailers or snippets out of the entire report that we have before us and beat those things to death right now at this table. I think that that's why we wished to send it back, so that we would have a longer period of time to examine, to review, to amend, to reject, to include, exclude, and that's why I thought we were doing this. It might even be this similar to conducting a review on how this venue that we're sitting in now is operated. It might, and so we do a review of that. We think it's great, but there might be a better way to do things if we sit down and discuss and dialogue and communicate and exchange and try to come to the collaboration that we ideally would like to do in all of our departments and in all of our offerings of the city, not just specific to this one. So I don't know why we wouldn't want to do that. I'm sure there's better ways to run the rinks. I'm sure there's new ways. We heard it tonight about groundwater and how we might be able to be better at conserving water if we talk and if we sit down and we consult and we review and we do things. But if we refuse to, then I don't think that admits that we are either good or bad, the best or can't get better. We have to sit down and talk about these things. And this is what this is. Receiving it, like Councillor Patchy, I'm comfortable with receiving it. I'm not endorsing it. I'm not saying, yay, let's go, giddy up. I'm saying let's get the report back and see what it says. And then we'll have an opportunity to review it and say, I like that, don't like that, don't like this, send it back, do it again. Great. So I think that we should vote on this, and I think we should move forward, Your Worship. We did this on April the 8th.
Okay, question's been called. The motion, does anyone want to read it again, or are you sort of vaguely aware of what we're trying to accomplish here? So, slap that man. So, on the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? We have Councillor Greaves and Councillor Brennan opposed. Balance of the councillor in favor. The motion passes. And now we move into question period for agenda items only. And seeing none.
Fred Taylor. Council has been in progress of extending our water to others, and I'm wondering if they're under the same regulations that we are, say restrictions in the summer, metering.
Mr. Taylor, which areas are you suggesting that we're extending water to?
I believe the reserves out here, out Cedar Road.
Yes, yes.
And I'm wondering, and like for instance, you have emergency connection to Lanceville. Is it in these agreements that if they do use our water, it's subject to the same regulations we are? Like, in other words, can I see the tap running all day long out in the reserve and I have to turn mine off?
Okay, is there a comment to Mr. Kenny?
First off, with regard to Lanceville, Council doesn't have an agreement at this point, but during the discussions that have been held with Lanceville, preliminary to any agreement, they certainly committed to actually more stringent regulations than we have in the city, because they have them more stringent already. With regard to the SFN properties, I believe they're cooperating in every way with the restrictions that we would want to have, and we'll certainly have further discussions with them.
Yeah. That was my understanding of it, too.
We don't have an agreement with Lanceville, I just heard, but the water main's connected?
It's a valid point. I think if there ever was an emergency situation where they called upon us, we would probably put some conditions into it that has to be understood. There would be no watering and so on for an emergency. Watering of plants and vegetation, all that good stuff.
It was interesting to hear Councillor Bestwick's concern about all the water pipe and water and costs with the Quarterway area and the bridge and area, that area. Is any other part of Bowen Road been irrigated in that same manner? Very expensive, I believe.
I don't disagree, but I don't think there is, but I don't know if staff wants to. Mr. Kenny, do you want to expand on that?
Well, I think that's the standard that we've been trying to build to in recent works, Your Worship.
Why would the park in my neighborhood be starved of water with the system in there for the last, say, 10 years? And yet we go and expend all this money new. Why would, how many parks, et cetera, have been cut off of water? The water stopped. In fact, in my area, when I seen the fall cleanup of somebody blowing out all the pipes, I went and said, why are you blowing out those pipes? They've never been used. The next day, a fellow with a jigsaw comes up there, cuts all the valves out of the system, cuts the power off, and destroys the system in the park. Are we doing that everywhere now? After we spend millions to put it in?
Councillor Kipp, do you have a question or a comment?
Well, yeah, it's Earth Day today. And I think Councillor Taylor he's got a great idea. But on Earth Day, the whole idea is when we do our planting on those places, they usually leave and put in the irrigation and stuff for about a 3-year period to establish the landscaping. And that's been one of the things that's been brought in for a couple of years now, trying to establish the landscaping and then removing the water and maintenance from it. And as you saw earlier, the parks and that, they do go green after the rain and they do go brown after. But it's the 43rd year of Earth Day, and I wonder if we have moved any of this forward. Are we wasting water still? Are we continually just throwing it onto
Well, it just puzzles me how we operate on one piece of park and go and spend a lot more, and you say maybe to establish something, but then you're going to tell me that they're going to cut off the system, everything on Bowen Road in a couple of years then, if it's established?
I think they do, maybe.
Very expensive way of doing things. Mm-hmm. And my last question is, if you don't mind, Councillor Greaves, I often wonder why you keep going back to a 4-man fire engine. Is there an actual reason why?
If you wish.
Is there a reason?
Yeah.
Well, that's the internationally accepted standard. 4-man engines. It's proven that's the best way to fight a fire. 5 is better. 6 is better. 4 is minimum. In downtown, it should be probably 5.
But when you have a dispatch to a scene of many engines, there's even if there was 2 men on an engine and 10 engines go, you have 20 men.
Say that again? Sorry. Say it again, please.
If you have a dispatch to a scene, an incident,
right,
and you send 10 engines, 2 men on each engine, you got 20 men there with lots of equipment.
Yes. So you want to have 10 engines?
And in reverse to this, if you send 4 men, which happens now, to an accident, which I don't think internationally they attend, motor vehicle accident, where there's no injury.
Oh, well, how do they know until they get there?
Yeah, but that's how you've directed them to go instead of the police. 2 firemen sweep the pavement. 1 walks around with a cart. So I am puzzled why 4 men there.
Well, after 25 years of firefighting, I say 4 men, engines, is the adequate number, is the minimum number. Knowing what I know as a firefighter, as a lieutenant, as a captain, based on experience, based on internationally industry accepted standards.
My limited amateur knowledge, even seen many engines go to a scene today compared to maybe 1 or 2 in the past. I then wonder whether that theory needs consideration as well.
To fight a structure fire, 2,000 square foot, 2-story structure fire with no exposures under NFP 1710, you need 15 to 17 firefighters. If you're 17 if you're using an aerial and 15 if you're not.
I think your dispatch does an excellent job of sending lots. Thank you.
Okay.
Ron Boland, 3165 King Richard Drive. Two fairly quick, I hope, questions. One, as I recall something about 2 months ago, since in-camera meetings came up tonight, there was to be a staff report that came forward to council within a month, as I recall, and I'm curious about the status of that report.
Which report?
Your Worship, it's the report on release of in-camera information. We have it on the schedule for the May the 13th.
May 13th.
May 13th, thank you. This evening, you also gave $12,500 out for community service grants to various organizations who do good things in this city. There was very little discussion that I heard on the 200,000 plus that you implied would again be given to the DNBIA. I don't see that their fundamental function is much different than those other groups who are doing good in the community. And in light of NEDCOR, I really believe I would question why you would continue to make that kind of a grant. And of course, that leaves the money off from other groups who might also be doing good with it. I believe I was disappointed to hear that the gentleman did not know how many BIAs in BC get municipal funding, because I believe we're still the only one in the province that is true. So I ask you, I guess, to consider, BIAs are a great idea, and I think groups that want to come together to do something for themselves, more power to them. But a continued government grant for one group over another, I believe, raises questions, and I hope you will question it.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Ilan Goldenblatt, 715 Sterling Avenue. In relation to the water management, I was wondering if there's been any consideration to mandate cisterns in new construction. In order to not make it socioeconomically onerous, it could be considered beyond a certain level of development. When we reach a certain dollar amount of development or a certain level, I think mandating cisterns, specifically, it could be like at the level of approving construction. It could be cisterns in foundations. It doesn't have to be the plastic cisterns. I think should be something that council should consider, or staff should consider, especially as we consider global warming and climate change, and specifically also with any new construction in relation to city projects and public projects, like we just built the Dunsmuir Resource Centre. I think we could have considered watering all the stuff downhill from there immediately, like around the current city council building and stuff like that, with a cistern and roof water collection. So,
okay, good suggestion. Yep, thank you, sir.
Why not? Gord Fuller, 604 Nichols Street. Earlier in the evening, much earlier in the evening, you put off approval of the City of Nanaimo's communication plan because of some input you received from the Chamber of Commerce. Does this mean that you will be formally requesting input from the citizens of Nanaimo on the communication plan as well?
Well, that's a good question. Probably we would. I think in this particular case, I understand the issues that were raised by the chamber came in at the very last minute, and there really wasn't time to either accept or reject them and incorporate them in the communication plan. But I think maybe staff might.
Well, Your Worship, I think we are amenable to input from the public, and it's been tabled at open meetings, and we'd appreciate any input at any time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you're putting it off specifically to take into account this input. Now, normally what would happen is an individual would appear as a delegation before the approval. The Chamber of Commerce could have appeared as a delegation before the approval tonight. And if you're going to table it and give them the chance to look at their input for a couple of weeks, perhaps also putting a request out to the public for input.
I can answer that. Is there, Mr. Cooper, you want to comment? You're on.
Thank you. I think to point out, when I presented on the 4th of March, the invitation was put out to the community at that time. If they had input they wanted to provide, they had the month of March to do that. And of course, we're still willing to take questions, of course, but there certainly has been a push to get input all through March and into part of April.
So that said, the Chamber of Commerce had that same month. So now you're giving them extra time in order to consider their input.
Yes, and during which time it's open for any other input as well.
Yeah, but I would be actively encouraging the public to do that somehow.
One other thing I would point out, it is the document. The document is a living document, so over the course of its lifespan, which doesn't have an end date, there's always a window for people from the community to provide the city input. The document will change and evolve as we move forward.
Yeah, but the question is, will they receive the same consideration as the Chamber of Commerce? Like, you know, approving it tonight could have happened had the Chamber of Commerce come as a delegation. Now you're moving it and giving them extra time to consider their input. So.
Okay, well, but that's still going to give a window for others that want to consider that and make a submission. They can do that as well.
That document's not living on this agenda.
Is there a seconder? Okay, we stand adjourned. Thank you.